The King's Avatar audiobook by Kevin the King's Avatar Chapter 661. The disappearing body technique was a skill that enabled ninjas to have Spider-Man-like abilities. However, this skill had a limited activation time. Deception was able to maintain this skill for 20 seconds. He planned on making good use of this time by planning his escape route, but he didn't expect Lord Grimm to find him so quick. This guy was very troublesome. From their previous fight together, he had experienced how bothersome Lord Grimm was. Right when he thought he had gotten a good haul, he just had to bump into him. He had used the disappearing body technique, and Darkness Palace itself was dimly lit. The higher you went, the darker it was too. How was this guy able to find me? Deception thought perplexedly. As he pondered over this, he didn't hesitate to move to a higher place. The long-ranged classes could still hit him at this height. However, when he moved from his hiding place, he heard Lord Grimm say, "There, did you see him? He moved just now." "I see him." Numerous people responded and immediately began attacking him. Deception felt helpless. He dared to make a bet with anyone that Lord Grimm hadn't actually known where he was hiding, but rather guessed that he would be around this area. Did the random firing force me to move and trick me into revealing my location? If I had just stayed still and took the sudden attack, would he have passed by me? Deception's current analysis of the situation was actually incorrect. He had underestimated Ye Xiu. It was true that Ye Xiu wasn't completely sure about his hiding position, but he could still roughly guess it. Deception's hiding position could be determined from his previous position and movement speed. In such a short period of time, when Deception went behind the pillar, he couldn't have moved much farther past it. Ye Xiu was sure about this. The previous blind firing hadn't been completely random. Even if it hadn't hit him, it wouldn't be too far off. Deception was unable to hold off from the heavy attacks from so many players. The disappearing body technique wasn't invincible. Escaping while being targeted by so many players on the stone pillar was no easy feat. Deception attempted to move to another pillar but immediately dismissed the notion when he remembered that there was that troublesome guy below. He slid down the pillar, and midway through, he suddenly kicked the stone pillar and jumped, ready to forcefully charge through the crowd. He moved like a bullet while taking note of Lord Grimm's position. He had to avoid that guy at all costs. However, right when he glanced over to check Lord Grimm's position, Lord Grimm's umbrella locked into him. He realized that of all the players, Lord Grimm's reaction speed was the fastest. The other players were still shooting at the stone pillar. Bang, bang. Two muffled sounds could be heard, and the two shots had actually hit him, causing Deception to tumble in the air. To be able to hit him while he was moving at such fast speeds. This guy's aim was too terrifying. Deception, who had been shot down from the air, was about to fall into a group of players. If he were surrounded by these players, there was no way he could escape. In that instant, he used the shadow clone technique, and then used his main body to force his way through. He waved his hands and threw a smoke bomb towards the ground, instantly creating a thick purple smoke screen around him. The purple smoke was so dense that no one could see anything despite being right next to each other. It would be considered quite good if they didn't crash into each other. Even though Heavenly Justice's players could blindly attack because they wouldn't be able to hurt each other, these aimless attacks would only deal a tiny bit of damage to Deception if they hit. They had no way of keeping him there. In the blink of an eye, Deception snuck his way out of the smoke and stealthily tossed a few caltrops behind. The two ninja tools were used flawlessly. Deception, who had been in this kind of situation countless times before, knew how to get out of this predicament. Deception had forced his way out of the encirclement. Normally, he would have ran away without looking back. However, today there was a troublesome guy who wouldn't let him off so easily. As a result, he couldn't help but look back. He noticed that while everyone else had lost their sense of direction and moving sluggishly, only Lord Grimm quickly dashed out of the smoke and pursued him. As expected, it's not going to be easy shaking him off. Deception turned around and sped up. His equipment could be considered as top quality in the eyes of the glory community. Ninjas were also a class that emphasized speed. As a result, equipment that increased his movement speed were highly valued. In terms of running, Lord Grimm's shabby equipment would definitely lose to Deception's. But how could Ye Xiu only rely on just running? Lord Grimm fired his gun while chasing after him. With all of the bullets coming from behind, Deception could only zigzag left and right to prevent Lord Grimm from accurately hitting him. But how could he dodge all of Lord Grimm's attacks? Not all of the bullets hit, but the accuracy was higher than what Deception had predicted. Deception felt like his zigzagging was pointless, but he also knew that if he didn't move in this way, he would have been turned into a honeycomb. The bullets induced a small stun effect, making it very annoying. Lord Grimm purposefully aimed at Deception's legs too, so he moved like a crippled duck. In this situation, even though Deception's speed was still very fast, Lord Grimm, who was able to slow down Deception's speed, was able to control him quite well. The exit is right there. Deception could already see the light coming out of the exit to Darkness Palace. With his current speed, he could shake off the other pursuers, but what about Lord Grimm? Deception wasn't confident that he could escape. Suddenly, the sounds of gunshots stopped. Surprised, Deception glanced over and realized that the distance between him and Lord Grimm had widened enough that he was out of Lord Grimm's attack range. Ye Xiu couldn't do much about it. He had tried his best to hold off Deception. If only his equipment was a bit better, he could definitely catch up to Deception. Unfortunately, his shabby equipment didn't increase his movement speed much, while his opponent's equipment increased his movement speed by a lot. And even though his bullets could slow him down, Deception was still able to slowly increase the distance. Currently, a lot of Heavenly Justice members had run past Lord Grimm, but they were only running after Deception, without using any skills to impede Deception's progress. Without slowing him down like Ye Xiu did, they would never be able to catch up. Now that Deception have escaped Ye Xiu's range, his movement speed increased even more. Deception felt more confident now after shrugging off Lord Grimm. Deception ignored all of the other pursuers. Steamed bun, little Tang. Ye Xiu raised his head and called out, "Come over, you need to stop Deception." Ye Xiu spoke. "No problem," both of them replied. Darkness Palace's exit was quite wide. Even with two players blocking, the exit couldn't be blocked completely. However, these two players didn't consider themselves as mere blockers. The murderous aura they released clearly stated their intention that they were ready to kill anyone who came near the exit. In the blink of an eye, Deception reached the exit. After escaping from Lord Grimm, he paid no heed to the other pursuers. Deception only glanced at the two players at the exit. Without even caring to avoid or evade them, he dashed forward. When Tang Ru saw this person dash forward without any hesitation, she immediately felt admiration for him. Soft Mist moved forward and welcomed him with her spear. As Deception ran closer, he saw their mismatched equipment and regarded them as worthless. The moment he reached Soft Mist, he suddenly jumped and threw 3 shurikens. Tang Ru didn't know everything about every class, but she had seen the majority of their skills before. In the arena part of the Heavenly Domain Challenge, she had encountered skills from various classes before. Tang Ru is still not knowledgeable about other profession, but have seen the majority of the skills. When she faced the Heavenly Domain Challenge, she had witnessed quite a number of these skills, even more so when she completed the Heavenly Domain Challenges. Shuriken was a low-level ninja skill which Tang Ru had seen many times before. The moment the shurikens were thrown towards her, she had Soft Mist move sideways and swing her spear. Ding! The sound of the spear colliding with those shurikens echoed throughout the area. This type of attack wouldn't have priority over her spear because projectile attacks were usually weak attacks. Tang Ru moved sideways, causing the shurikens to pass by her without harming her. Against such a weak skill, Tang Ru had used such a domineering method to counter it. Of course, with such a domineering method, she also showed that she wasn't just any ordinary player. Deception didn't expect a character with such a mismatched equipment to be so skilled. Are we of the same profession? At this moment, Deception thought about this question. Although the equipment worn by experts weren't usually bad, experts who came out for scrap picking would usually wear poor equipment. Didn't Deception also use low-grade equipment during scrap picking? After deflecting the shurikens, the spear didn't slow down and continued to arc towards Deception. As for Deception, he lived up to being a ninja. He crouched down in midair and dodged the spear. He straightened his legs and stepped on the spear. Using it as leverage, he kicked at Soft Mist. Seeing Deception and Soft Mist fighting, Heavenly Justice was completely petrified by the scene before them. Before their eyes was a pro-level fight. With those mechanics, were these guys really normal players? Deception rapidly descended as if he were planning on tackling Soft Mist, but halfway he was met with a flying brick, stopping him. Soft Mist's spear swung at him and threw him towards the ground. Deception immediately had his character quick recover when he was suddenly met with a handful of sand. Sand toss. Deception obviously recognized this skill and immediately turned away so he wouldn't be blinded. The brawler was faster than the sand, though. Right when Deception was about to turn his body away, his butt was kicked and he was sent stumbling face down into the floor. Deception hastily stabilized himself, but was immediately knocked over by Tang Ru's circle swing. The Heavenly Justice players felt numb inside. They had so many players, yet they couldn't compare to these two players with trash equipment, who could stop Deception from escaping. Seeing Deception being tossed around on the ground by them made them sweat. The King's Avatar Chapter 662. Deception had been careless. Facing two players with such garbage equipment, he hadn't given them a second thought. If not, with his level of skill and superior equipment, even against both Tang Ru and Steamed Bun, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state. Circle Swing was categorized as a forced grab and couldn't be quick recovered, but Deception was quite quick. As soon as he crashed into the ground, he immediately followed up with a roll. In the blink of an eye, he was back on his feet as if he really had used a quick recover. Deception no longer underestimated his opponents. He only hated how he had used his ninja tools. A ninja's ninja tools were a part of the skill tree. However, ninja tools differed from ninjutsu, which could be immediately cast after forming the hand seals. On the other hand, ninja tools required the ninja to craft the tools in order to use them. There was a limit to how many ninja tools a ninja could carry. Normally, ninjas would prepare enough before setting out, but he had been using his smoke bombs and caltrops the moment the skills had refreshed from cooldown, so he had run out a while ago. He had been using pre-made ninja tools. How would he have any time to craft any while running? Seeing how these two fearsome individuals were blocking his path, Deception regretted using up all of his tools. In this sort of situation, they clearly weren't going to give him any time to craft his tools. When he got back onto his feet, Soft Mist's spear immediately stabbed towards him. Deception hastily dodged when he saw something else flying towards him. It wasn't a skill or a tool, but a person. Steamed Bun Invasion had directly pounced on him, pinned him to the ground, and started attacking him in a flurry. Deception wanted to cry. Even though he was a lone wolf, he still had plenty experience with the game. Steamed Bun Invasion had used the brawler skill, Tyrannical Chain Punch, which pinned the target to the ground and followed up with a flurry of punches. A skill was just a skill, though. Every person would use it differently. Facing this wild monkey, Deception wanted to go crazy. The skill wasn't being used with any strategy to it. It was just a bunch of random attacks. How could he bear being pinned by such a person? Not longer after tyrannical chain punch ended without the effects of the skill forcefully pressuring him, Deception immediately dug into the ground. "What?" Steamed Bun cried out in astonishment. "You've never seen it before," Tang Ru said. Soft Mist had already started acting. It wasn't impossible to find someone who was using the underground tunneling technique. There was a small hole used for breathing from the ninjato's sheath. It was very small, though, so the terrain easily hid it. However, Deception had used the skill right in front of them. How could they not know where he was? Soft Mist stabbed the ground, but something didn't feel right. The underground tunneling technique wasn't a rigid skill that only allowed the user to go up and down. The user could tunnel around a small area. Deception was a skilled ninja. Since he dared to use the technique in front of them, he obviously had some confidence in using it. When Soft Mist stabbed the ground, Deception popped out of the ground behind her. His ninjato didn't gleam with cold light. It silently stabbed Soft Mist. Deception didn't follow up, though. He had already started running. No matter how confident he was, he didn't dare to continue fighting the two of them. There were more chasing after him. He had to be especially aware of Lord Grimm in particular. Deception glanced back when he saw a brick flying towards him. He hastily tilted his head and dodged it. Suddenly, he was struck by Soft Mist's spear. These two reacted too quickly. Deception was astonished. His underground tunneling technique had hit Soft Mist. Whenever an attack hit a character, there would be some sort of effect. Deception thought Soft Mist would be startled by it. He didn't know how much Soft Mist had been slowed down, but she had been able to react in time and chase him down with her spear. No matter how fast he moved, he couldn't be faster than the enemy extending her arms. The superior range of a spear finally displayed itself here. Soft Mist had used Dragon Tooth. It didn't deal much damage, but it still had a stun effect. This stun duration was enough for Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion to trap Deception again. Helpless, Deception could only start fighting the two of them again and see if he could find an opportunity to escape. After a few back and forths, he couldn't find any openings. In trouble, he heard someone say, "You little punk, you scrap pick very bravely now." Deception knew who was talking, but he didn't have time to look. He relied on Tang Ru's and Steamed Bun's lack of real battle experience to grasp an opening. He was about to take advantage of it, so how would he have the time to glance at Lord Grimm? Deception's two hands moved in a blur as they formed a complex seal. It was clearly a high-leveled move. If not, he wouldn't need so much time to complete the seal. Ninjutsu Shadow Dance. Numerous clones instantly appeared all around Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion. Tang Ru and Steamed Bun hadn't experienced this skill too many times. High-leveled skills required more time to activate. Even Deception required a good opening in order to successfully execute the skill. Normal players would have needed even more time than him, but Tang Ru and Steamed Bun completely dominated their opponents. Very few of their opponents had the opportunity to activate the skill. Thus, even though the two of them knew what this skill did, they didn't have much experience dealing with it. Deception was an expert as well. Several clones jumped and attacked them all at once. The two didn't know what to do. The attacks from the shadows wouldn't bother them too much, but they had no way of grabbing onto all of the clones. The Blade Master's shadow steps hid the real body amongst the fakes, but that wasn't the case for Shadow Dance. They wouldn't be able to catch Deception unless they killed all of the clones. But Deception obviously wasn't using this skill to continue fighting them. He was just using it as a distraction so he could escape. He just had a few of his clones randomly jump at Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion before sprinting towards outside of Darkness Palace. Tang Ru and Steamed Bun tried hard, but they could only keep on killing the clones one after the other, but Deception would never jump to a clone that was attacking them. As for the other clones, he had them run as well. Shadow steps only had a limited range, so the clones couldn't be too far from the real character. This made it easier to control, though. Deception had two clones stop Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion from advancing. At this moment, Deception finally had time to check the situation. Sure enough, Lord Grimm had caught up to him along with a bunch of Heavenly Justice players. There were even a few players that were faster than him, but in any case, none of them were closer to him than Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion. After stopping them from chasing him, Deception felt like escaping wouldn't be too difficult now. He still needed to pay close attention to Lord Grimm, though. What trap had that guy set for him? Should he have some of his clones harass him? Deception was still deciding when one of the clones moved askew. Soft Mist clearly hadn't attacked it. In that moment of absent-mindedness, the clone had been whisked away. Not good. Deception suddenly understood what had happened. He hastily moved his character when he saw the clones running out of Darkness Palace suddenly poof into smoke as he was grabbed by a Chi Master. Chi Mr. Skill, Cloud Grasping Fist. Deception obviously knew this skill. He just hadn't thought his enemies would use this sort of skill to break his shadow dance. He only had two clones remaining. One of them had been grabbed by the Chi Master, and the other was instantly killed by Steamed Bun Invasion. By default, the system forced Deception back into his original state. Ha ha, why are you only paying attention to me? Aren't you looking down on everyone else here? Lord Grimm's laugh floated over. Deception was sad. Indeed, he had ended up paying too much attention to Lord Grimm. He had thought that Lord Grimm was the only top expert among the group. Even though the two with trash equipment had surprised him, he hadn't put Heavenly Justice's players in his eyes. However, the one who had used Cloud Grabbing Fist on him had just been a normal member of Heavenly Justice. The only reason he was able to pull it off was because he was a Chi Master that could use Cloud Grabbing Fist. Deception was certain that the reason the Cloud Grabbing Fist had worked on his shadow steps wasn't because of the Chi Master's skill, but either on accident or... Not bad, Deception heard a voice. Lord Grimm had walked over talking to the Chi Master. Sure enough. Deception knew that he had fallen into Lord Grimm's hands. In theory, none of the clones were his real body for shadow steps. However, because the clones could only move around in a limited area in order to satisfy this condition, there had to be a marker of some sort. This marker was the clone being used by the user. If this clone were killed, it just meant there was one less clone. Even if the player didn't choose to, the system would automatically throw the player into another clone, and this clone would become the new marker. This marker clone was called the Heart of the Shadow Steps. It wasn't the real body. The player could still freely switch. What Ye Xiu had done was determine that Deception had used the clone Soft Mist was fighting as the Heart of Shadow Steps, and so he quietly ordered a Chi Master to suddenly use Cloud Grasping Fist to bring him over. By the time Deception noticed, it was too late to move. All of the clones that had rushed out of Darkness Palace were immediately recalled because they were now out of range of the Heart the King's Avatar. Chapter 663 Deception's path ahead was completely blocked off. Lulen Slash had even set up a net comprised of several players linked together in the air to defend. Deception was simply too slippery to catch. It was no wonder that he was infamous. He had successfully pulled off his scrap-picking operations time after time. Lulen Slash had fought alongside Deception before, so he had a good understanding of his skill level. This time, after becoming the target, he deeply felt how talented this person was. If the 5 players on his team were qualified to be pro players, Deception was definitely qualified as well. Lulen Slash had already started thinking of how he would recruit him. For a moment he wasn't sure what to say, but the Heavenly Justice players surrounding Deception had begun shouting, "Run! Why'd you stop running? Why don't you give it another try?" There were 100 of them, yet they couldn't even catch a single person. Fortunately, 2 players had been blocking the exit. These two players wore such garbage equipment that everyone wanted to cry just looking at them. Heavenly Justice's players were ashamed and resentful. Deception didn't say anything. When he killed Lulan Slash, 3 items from the level 70 wild boss had dropped. Even if he died, he would still profit, unless he were unlucky enough to lose all 3 of those items. However, the probability of this happening was too low. Maybe none of these items would drop and he lost 1 or 2 pieces of equipment. He would have made a killing if that were the case. If you dropped an item after being killed, getting it back wasn't an easy task. A single fight was rarely enough. However, even if you couldn't get your dropped item back, getting another item of equal value wouldn't be bad either. However, this wasn't even close to the case right now. Nothing on Deception was equal in value to any of the 3 items that were dropped by a level 70 wild boss. Deception clearly knew this point, so he knew that when he died, he was very calm. So what if he died? He would still make a huge profit. The Heavenly Justice players could only curse at him. No one moved, though. They understood this point. They wouldn't be able to get the items back if they killed him once. Perhaps there was a better way. However, their guild leader wasn't saying anything. Lord Grimm stood out, though. "You can't run anymore. Hand over the items," Ye Xiu said. Deception didn't even look at him. Quite a few Heavenly Justice players turned to look at him. They felt like his words were a bit naive. Even if Deception died, he would still profit. Why would he just hand over the items like that? "This brother is very talented," Lulan Slash finally spoke. His opening words were meaningless. Afterwards, he played by the book. "If you don't mind, why don't we add each other as friends? You won't need to return the items. Just consider them a gift from me." It was very obvious what his intentions were. Lulan Slash's boldness manifested itself. He was willing to gift 3 level 70 wild boss drops. His character as a money warrior showed. Even though the players from Heavenly Justice weren't too happy, Deception was truly very skilled. They could understand why Lulan Slash made this type of decision. Let alone the fact that none of the players that had come to kill the wild boss were outsiders. Everyone in the game near Lulan Slash was planning on entering the pro scene. If he found someone talented, of course he would try and recruit him. Deception ignored him, though, leaving Lulan Slash hanging. Lulan Slash felt a bit embarrassed, but he didn't back down. He played his big card. "Brother, scrap picking is a waste with your talent. I'm currently forming a pro team and I'm looking for players to join. Brother, would you be interested? If you are, I'm open to whatever conditions you have." The Heavenly Justice players were jealous. Being offered to join a pro team and even being allowed to state your own terms. How could a glory player not feel jealous about such treatment? But when the person in front of them heard such incredible terms, he remained indifferent. He didn't even glance at Lulan Slash. "Brother." "What brother?" Right when Lulan Slash was about to say something, Ye Xiu interrupted him. He saw Lord Grimm transform his umbrella into a spear and stab towards Deception. Deception didn't even dodge. After getting stabbed, Deception stumbled. Lord Grimm stabbed again and Deception fell to the ground. He didn't seem to have any plans to get up. "He logged off," Ye Xiu said to Lulan Slash. Lulan Slash was a pro-level player. Just from the reactions made by Deception after being attacked, it was clear that no one was controlling the character. Deception was still in a combat state, so he couldn't directly log off. He could only force quit the game. If that were the case, his character would remain in the game until he left combat. Another possibility was that he had left his character in the game and was just not controlling it anymore. Maybe he's still there. Lulan Slash thought of this possibility. "Then you want to keep on chatting?" Ye Xiu asked. Lulan Slash felt a bit embarrassed. Whether the person was there or not, his attitude was clear. He wouldn't pay any attention to them. Talking to a piece of wood with so many people watching was too embarrassing. If he had confidence in persuading the other side, he might give it a try, but Lulan Slash's previous statements had been very clear. If even these statements couldn't move him, then nothing would work. After thinking about it, Lu Len felt like it would be better to show off his strength. In the end, he pointed his sword at Deception and said, "Kill him." As soon as he gave the order, the players attacked and Deception instantly became a corpse. He didn't revive for a long time. It seemed as if he had truly logged off. Deception must be celebrating his success. It was a good thing Lu Len didn't continue speaking. If not, Deception might have gotten out of combat and actually logged off. That would have been even worse. When Lu Len looked at the ground, it didn't make him feel happy though. Not a single one of the 3 level 70 drops that Deception had stolen had dropped. 2 pieces of ninja equipment had dropped, but Lu Len wouldn't put any equipment from the game in his eyes. He looked at them and didn't even want to pick them up. He was clear-headed enough to know that he wasn't the only one unhappy. He said loudly, "Killing him can be considered our revenge. You can blame me for being too careless and getting killed by him. Don't worry, everyone. I'm not going to reduce any of the rewards for this run just because of something like this." The Heavenly Justice players felt much better after hearing his comforting words. They clearly knew that these level 70 wild boss drops would have been used by Lu Len for his pro team, so he couldn't directly distribute them to the guild. He could only give them other rewards. It was the same for any other club guild. Equipment from level 70 wild bosses could sometimes be found in the guild storage, but materials were a dream. None of them expected to get any of the boss drops anyways, so they didn't care too much if Lu Len didn't end up getting the drops. After all, Heavenly Justice had been founded through Lu Len's money and his team had just been created. The fans created through hype didn't have as much loyalty as the other club guilds. For the club guild players, if they were fans of the team, they would share the team's spirit and cohesiveness. If something like this happened and not getting the materials affected the team's development, they would definitely feel worried too. As for Heavenly Justice, when Lu Len expressed his attitude on this matter, the majority of the players were happy. Of course, they wouldn't display it. They remained gloomy in the game. However, Lu Len understood their feelings. If not, he wouldn't have said any of these words to comfort them. In order to gain more fans, he had to be willing to say anything. After placating his guild members, Lu Len had to say something to Ye Xiu too. Even though Ye Xiu had said that he would treat the ones that had been stolen away as his part of his share, but how could Lu Len let him do that? Having those items stolen away was definitely his fault. Even though he could come up with many excuses, none of it could be blamed on Ye Xiu. He had been responsible for attacking the other competing guilds and had completed his task beautifully. Being able to crush 2 club guilds was something that they couldn't usually do. Lu Len messaged Lord Grimm. He gave him the list of items that had dropped from Night Streak and then said, "The 3 drops stolen away by that guy should be considered as part of my share, but I really wasn't able to see which items were stolen. How about we first split it evenly and then you can pick any 3 from my share?" "What? You're planning on letting him go so easily?" Ye Xiu said. "Him?" Lu Len asked. He obviously didn't feel happy about letting him go, but that was how it had turned out. Lu Len was very angry, but what could he do? Deception had already died and they didn't know which city he revived at. Chasing and hunting him down wasn't worth it either. Plus, they probably wouldn't be able to get the items back by hunting him down. Once he revived, he could just transfer the materials to his storage. The items in storage couldn't be dropped. "Just provide me with info. I'll be responsible for hunting him." Ye Xiu patted his chest. "God, look. There are still a few wild bosses left to kill. Shouldn't we put in our efforts towards those bosses? If we can get another boss, isn't that more valuable than getting those 3 drops back from that punk? Wasting your time and our resources on him just isn't worth it." Lu Len refuted. "Of course we have to get the bosses, but we can't let that guy go either. In any case, All you have to do is tell me his coordinates. Announce it to your guild and just have them report his location if they ever see him," Ye Xiu said. "But if you go and take care of that punk, how am I supposed to steal bosses?" "You don't need to use a spear to kill a fly," Ye Xiu said. Lulan hesitated. "Are you saying that punk is the fly or the boss is the fly?" The King's Avatar Chapter 664 Deception hadn't actually logged off. He was still in the game. After knowing he would certainly die, he was too lazy to try anything else, so he got up and went to take a bathroom break. When he returned, as expected, his character had died. The surrounding players hadn't left yet, though. That eyesore Lord Grimm was still walking about. Deception didn't care. It wasn't like he would revive on the spot. After choosing to revive, he clicked on the choice to revive at the closest city. He checked his inventory and found that all 3 of the boss drops were still there. He knew that he would still be profiting today no matter what he had lost. When he saw which equipment had been dropped, he felt his heart hurt a bit, but the profit he had earned was far greater than his losses. It was the first time in his scrap-picking career that he had managed to obtain level 70 wild boss drops. His luck today had been very good. Deception coming to this area had been a complete coincidence, too. If he had planned on going scrap-picking, he usually wouldn't wear his best equipment. Today, he had just wanted to get a few items from Darkness Palace and just happened to run into the wild boss. While the guilds fought, Deception hid on the sidelines. He didn't act blindly without thinking, because the equipment he had on him was quite expensive. Scrap pickers always had to consider whether the equipment obtained would make up for the equipment they lost. Since he had worn a good set of equipment this time, he obviously couldn't press forward rashly like he usually could. Deception had waited patiently for a long time. Today's wild boss fight wasn't as chaotic as usual. There were fewer participating guilds, and Heavenly Justice had the clear advantage, not giving the other competing guilds any opportunities. This sort of situation wasn't suitable for scrap picking, so the experienced Deception continued to wait patiently. In the end, the opposing guilds had been defeated, and Heavenly Justice began focusing the wild boss. This conclusion made Deception quite disappointed. However, he still waited, hoping Heavenly Justice would make a huge mistake and get wiped by the boss. If that happened, he could happily pick away. Heavenly Justice didn't get wiped as he had hoped. The one to fall was the wild boss, but at this moment, Heavenly Justice became careless. They made a common mistake committed by victors. The moment the winners celebrated, he acted. Afterwards, Deception obviously needed to try and escape. Even though he failed, his gains had been quite considerable. How much would he be able to sell these 3 wild boss drops for? Deception wasn't really sure because these sort of items rarely showed up on the market. Deception felt like if he sold it correctly, he would be able to live lavishly for years to come. HM. Did that guy revive? The instant Deception revived, the surrounding players reacted. After a character revived, the corpse would disappear and turn into a tombstone. If he had really logged off, this wouldn't have happened. That guy was still on, Lulan shouted. Have your players in Darkness City be on the lookout. Ye Xiu instructed and then called out to Tang Ru and Steamed Bun. We're leaving. Everyone, let's go. Lulan ordered. Grab the equipment on your way out. Lulan was pointing at the equipment dropped from the battle. Quite a few players from Conquering Clouds and Seaside had died. Players who died would naturally drop equipment. No matter how hard they tried to get them back, there would still be many pieces of equipment that would land in the hands of Heavenly Justice's players. The guilds all had their own ways of resolving this situation. In general, it was a difficult issue to deal with because, in this type of chaotic battle, it was difficult to pinpoint who exactly took your equipment. Ye Xiu had talked about these equipment drops with Lulan earlier. Lulan now understood why Ye Xiu said he didn't need equipment, if it were after the battle. It turns out he had complete confidence in their dominating victory, and knew that he could just pick which of the plundered equipment he liked after the battle. But choosing out of all of these was quite troublesome. Everything had to be organized first, so Lulan made the decision. Instead of going through all that trouble, he would directly buy them the equipment that they wanted when they got back to the city. Right when he said this, they realized deception had revived. Ye Xiu said a few words and started rushing back to the city with Lord Grim. "How do you know he's in Darkness City?" Lulan chased after him and asked. Darkness City was the city closest to Darkness Palace. From his equipment, it didn't look like he had planned on scrap picking today. If he had something else to do, isn't it common sense that he would pick the closest city as his revival point? Ye Xiu said. Right, Lulan suddenly understood. He hadn't thought about this point because he had no knowledge of how scrap picking worked. Lulan gave an order in the guild chat. Ye Xiu and his team naturally saw it too. Right now, they were under heavenly justice, so they belonged to the guild. "I have players in Darkness City who are heading over to search," Lulan said to Ye Xiu. "That's good," Ye Xiu replied. Lord Grim turned his head to glance back. Lulan also looked back and was a bit speechless. As his and Ye Xiu's groups rushed back, they had left the other Heavenly Justice players behind. The players with equipment that increased their movement speed were still able to keep up for a while because they ran faster, but gradually, without properly utilizing their stamina, they would run out. If they could no longer sprint, their equipment's added movement speed wouldn't do anything. In comparison, Lulan and his team kept up. Thinking of this point, Lulan felt a bit happy. They deserved to be pros. Look, they could keep up with a god. Just as he was thinking in this way, he noticed that soft mist and steamed bun invasion were easily keeping up as well. When he looked, he immediately realized how disgusting their equipment looked. He was wearing good equipment and had some increase in movement speed, yet he was running at the same speed as them. How could he feel happy? Lulan felt quite defeated. Have the brothers who are investigating in the city hide their guild tags, Ye Xiu suddenly said. He was still being careful. Okay. Lulan received the message and immediately passed it down. Have players in other cities pay attention too. Darkness City is just an estimation. He isn't guaranteed to be there, Ye Xiu added. Makes sense. Lulan nodded his head and ordered again. When ocean ahead, homeward bound, thousand falling leaves and night tide heard their conversation, they tried hard not to interrupt. They couldn't compare to steamed bun in this area. Student steamed bun would say anything that he thought of. When he heard the two talk, steamed bun opened up the guild interface. After studying it carefully, he suddenly asked, "When you said makes sense, who said that?" "Me," Lulan said. "Who is this me?" steamed bun asked again. "What do you mean?" Lulan was puzzled. Lulan steamed bun seemed to have determined something, but he still seemed unsure. "That's me," Lulan said. "Senior, how mighty," steamed bun excitedly said. "You can even order around a guild leader." "What a god!" Sweat. Ye Xiu typed an emoji sweating. Lulan typed a depressed face. The others had wanted to say something about this. Lulan and them weren't just any players in the game. They had been good friends even before they started playing and understood each other well. With their friendship, the other four wouldn't object to any one of them being the guild leader. In the end, Lulan became the guild leader because they felt like he had the most potential as a leader. If this hadn't happened in front of them, they would never have, though Lulan could ever be regarded as a little kid and he didn't even look like he had any objections. How embarrassing. At this moment, all of them felt a bit embarrassed. Lulan wanted to explain, but he also felt like he had been acting like a beach. How would he explain himself? Wouldn't it just make matters worse? In the end, Ye Xiu was the calmest. He immediately said, "Steamed bun, what do you know? We're discussing strategy." "Oh, so that's the case," steamed bun said. This sort of explanation was enough for steamed bun, but for everyone else it didn't explain anything. Lulan knew his friends were probably laughing at him, they just didn't express it. How depressing. However, a message suddenly arrived, averting everyone's attention from the issue. Someone's found him, he really is in Darkness City, Lulan said. Good, Ye Xiu replied. What do we do now? Lulan asked. Ocean ahead and the others were crying. Brother, do you have short-term memory? How can you keep acting like this? But this time Ye Xiu was generous. Instead of directly saying it, he sent Lulan a private message. Watch him and figure out where he's headed. The instant Lulan received the message, Lulan immediately realized. He had acted like Ye Xiu's beach again. Fortunately, he had been reminded by Ye Xiu. It was a you say it instead of me message. Lulan immediately gave the order and told Ye Xiu, we're not sure right now, let's just head over according to his coordinates. That's fine too, can you get us some better equipment, especially any that add movement speed? If not, dealing with that guy might be a bit difficult. Ye Xiu replied. I'll see if anyone can do it for us. Lulan busied about. Following afterwards, they quietly entered Darkness City. Ye Xiu and Lulan talked to each other privately, so the others obviously wouldn't know. It seems like he's planning on teleporting away. Lulan received some new information. Have your players in the other cities hurry and pay attention to the teleport formations. The more cities, the better, Ye Xiu hastily said. Already done. After being embarrassed, Lulan checked himself. Did he really need Ye Xiu to teach him this type of stuff? Not at all. With his experience, he could have done it completely on his own. The King's Avatar Chapter 665, they finally arrived in Darkness City. The news that they had received on the way there had made them feel gratified. Deception hadn't gone directly to the teleport formation. Instead, he headed towards the marketplace in Darkness City. If he had ran straight for the teleport formation, Lulan and the others would have been in big trouble. The heavenly domain had numerous cities. Having people stationed in every city just wasn't possible. The good news didn't last long. The strong teams had an astonishing amount of fans and support. It was a world war right now. The marketplace was cold and empty. Deception walked around for only a short while before he quickly departed. Fortunately, when they received this information, they had just arrived at Darkness City. Along the way there, they saw battles taking place everywhere, so their group hid their guild tags. Ever since Heavenly Justice made the announcement that they were forming a pro team, they had been looked down upon by the other teams. Now that everyone was in a state of aggression, who knew if their violence would fall upon Heavenly Justice? Lulan didn't want Heavenly Justice to be dragged into the war. Even though this war was a result of a dispute between who was the best team, Lulan didn't want to look for trouble. Without a guild tag next to them, they appeared inconspicuous. Since everyone was busy fighting, they didn't have time to pay close attention to whether or not that passerby really was Lord Grimm. When they arrived at Darkness City's entrance, there were people waiting there to bring them the equipment that Lulan had asked them to find for him. Ye Xiu picked which pieces of equipment he wanted. If Lulan had any, he would give it to them. Otherwise, he would spend money to buy it. Just a few sets of in-game equipment for a few characters wasn't worth much in Lulan's eyes. Ye Xiu's group had helped him a lot. He was perfectly happy with spending this bit of money for them. Ye Xiu's group wasn't polite. After taking their new equipment, the three characters switched them out. Their models and stats immediately transformed. Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion finally had a full set of class-specific gear. Their equipment only fell short of equipment that could only be dropped from the 700-player dungeons. In the game, their equipment would already be considered outstanding. As for Lord Grimm, his stats had changed, but his model, his new and improved equipment still looked like garbage on him. He still looked like a rainbow. Mixing and matching equipment from different classes almost never looked good together. Each class had equipment that they were proficient in. If you mixed and matched equipment, you would lose stats from your class proficiencies. The better the equipment, the greater the losses. However, Lord Grimm's unspecialized didn't have any proficiencies, so he didn't care much about any of that. As a result, he wore a cloth belt, leather boots, a leather cap, heavy armor, and cloth pants. It gave others a disgusting top-heavy feeling. However, Ye Xiu didn't care about his appearance. He opened up his character's profile and appreciated his stats. Because unspecialized characters didn't change classes, their stat growth was completely balanced. Their strength, vitality, intelligence, and spirit all had a growth of 3. When unspecialized characters reached level 70, their base stats would each be at 210. The stat point rewards from each quest was also evenly distributed for a total of 90 points per stat. For any class, there were no worthless stats. All of them had their uses, just some less than others. Thus, all players would complete these quests regardless. At level 70, Lord Grimm's base stats were all at 300. All characters had a total of 1200 points at level 70, unless they missed a quest. The only difference between them was how those 1200 points were distributed. Unspecialized characters had a balanced growth, so their 840 points from leveling up were evenly distributed between each stat. However, every other class was different. For example, battle mages had a 3.5 growth in strength and intelligence, and a 2.5 growth in vitality and spirit. Thus, when they reached level 70, their total base stats would add up to 840, but their strength and intelligence would both be at 245, while their vitality and spirit would each be at 175. These stat growths couldn't be changed by players. The players needed to match equipment based on their needs. Apart from equipment, players could also freely distribute the 160 points they got from the guild buffs. As for how these points were distributed, it was up to the players to decide, especially for classes like battle mages, which dealt both physical and magical damage. They had to think about whether they should stack strength, intelligence, equal strength and intelligence, or a proportion of each. This was a question that was still debated to this day. In particular, when a player got new equipment, they often had to consider this issue. The top-tier battle mage, One Autumn Leaf, had chosen to lean slightly more towards strength and lean slightly less towards intelligence. As one of the most popular characters in Glory, many players naturally copied this choice. However, reality proved that blindly following a pro player's choice was not always a smart decision, because normal players didn't have the resources to accomplish proper stat distribution. First of all, their skill level wasn't as high. Second of all, their equipment was far from pro level. A lot of stat distributions required a certain level of equipment to display their utmost potential. If they didn't meet those requirements, even if their skills were at the pro level, they still wouldn't be able to utilize it properly. Tang Ru and Steamed Bun were at the pro level in terms of mechanics, but their game sense wasn't there yet. Having them choose their own equipment would certainly end poorly. As a result, Ye Xiu helped them choose their equipment. Tang Ru's soft mist went with a strength-oriented stat distribution. After switching equipment, her strength reached 870, while her intelligence was only at 540. These stats were already quite impressive in-game, but it was still far from the pro level. One Autumn Leaf had 1220 strength and 1140 intelligence. These two main stats were 1.67 times greater than Soft Mist's. This didn't even include the disparity in vitality and spirit. In terms of overall stats, these in-game impressive stats were not worth anything in pro gameplay. Soft Mist's equipment definitely couldn't be regarded as bad in the game. All of them were second only to those that could be found from the 700-player dungeons and those from level 70 wild bosses. Even those higher-grade pieces of equipment couldn't compare to silver equipment. In truth, The reason silver equipment was superior compared to orange and purple equipment wasn't because they had much better stats, but rather because they were customized specifically for the player. It was for this reason that silver equipment allowed pro characters to have such terrifying stats. This sort of disparity in stats was difficult to make up for with skill alone. It was the reason why Wei Chen was so uneasy about meeting a team like Excellent Era in the Challenger League. If Soft missed, with her 870 strength and 540 intelligence, faced off against one Autumn Leaf, with his 1220 strength and 1140 intelligence, wasn't the difference as obvious as night and day. This didn't even factor in the difference in attack power between Soft Mist's level 70 purple weapon, Extreme Light Spear, and one Autumn Leaf silver weapon, Evil Annihilation. This didn't even considering the other additional stats apart from the 4 main stats provided by the other silver equipment on one Autumn Leaf. This sort of equipment definitely wasn't enough. Ye Xiu might be satisfied with his Lord Grimm's current stats, but he knew that it was still far from reaching the required level to enter the pro scenes. His Lord Grimm's stats actually weren't even as good as Soft Mist's. Soft Mist at least had proficiency in her armor. Those extra stats from proficiency wasn't something that he had. In order to make up for that gap, he would need to rely on self-made equipment. Specializing the stats was an issue that Su Mukyu had been analyzing for the Myriad Manifestations umbrella. A weapon like the Myriad Manifestations umbrella had never appeared before in Glory, but the concept of specializing the stats had been analyzed in the pro scene already. Lord Grimm's strange appearance made others want to laugh, but they didn't know that Ye Xiu had done it this way for a specific reason. However, even though they had switched equipment and were looking over one another's new appearances, they never stopped moving. After understanding Deception's current path and Darkness City's teleport location, Ye Xiu decided, we can make it. Then he immediately gave the order, Little Tang Steamed Bun, you two head to the revival spot first. Once you get there, message me. Okay. The two listened to his order and then left. They were clearly planning on killing Deception multiple times. Thinking about how Deception had stolen away 3 pieces of material, Lulen Slash felt very excited about this sort of method. The other 4 felt the same. There had been so many of them at Darkness Palace, yet they still failed to catch that guy. It was too shameful, they had to win back their face. The 5 people were pumping themselves up when they heard Ye Xiu say, then I'll see you guys later. If I need any more information, I'll contact you, Little Lan. See you later. The 5 went into a daze. They had followed this senior all the way here. Now that they had arrived, he just said see you later. Hey, Lulen Slash suddenly called out. The 5 continued to chase after him. What's wrong? Ye Xiu had Lord Grimm ask while running. What do you mean see you guys later? We're going too, Lulen Slash said. You're going too. Ye Xiu was puzzled. I thought you guys felt like chasing and killing him was a waste of time. Lulen Slash realized he had truly said just that. How could he suddenly change his mind? How did that happen? Relax. With this equipment, he won't be able to escape. I'll get revenge for you. If I get those 3 materials, I'll definitely return them to you, but I feel like he won't have them on him. He probably put them in his storage already, or maybe you could find some way to get a buyer to get close to him. I reckon that he'll bring those materials out if that happens. As long as he has it, we'll find a way to get them back for you, Ye Xiu said. Okay, I can't talk anymore. I have to hurry or else I won't be able to intercept him. Remember to update me on his whereabouts whenever you can, Ye Xiu said and had Lord Grimm speed up. He wore leather shoes, cloth legs, heavy armor, yet he easily left the 5 of them behind. The 5 were tongue-tied, but they had already slowed down. How amazing! In the end, Homeward Bound sighed at Ye Xiu's decision. The King's Avatar Chapter 666, Lord Grimm disappeared from view after turning the corner of the street. In the end, Lulan/Slash's group didn't follow him any longer. Let's just provide him with the information he wants, Lulan/Slash said angrily. Information is information. You'd better not keep acting like a child. Seeing that there was no one else around them, the other four immediately warned him mercilessly. I've been tainted. Lulan/Slash looked up at the sky, wanting to cry. Today really had been a disgraceful day. He had been killed in the middle of his allies and acted like someone's beach in front of everyone else. He really wanted to find a hole and bury himself in it. Ye Xiu had Lord Grim hurry ahead. After chasing Deception for so long, he had a good idea of Deception's movement speed. He was confident that he would be able to reach the teleport formation and intercept him. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to take the correct path. There were simply too many factors in this game. Whether it was in the wild, a city, or a dungeon, Ye Xiu couldn't say he was very familiar with all the terrain. However, with the help of the in-game map, Ye Xiu wouldn't make such a low-leveled mistake like making the wrong turn. Soon, Darkness City's teleport formation entered his range of view. There was still no updates as to where Deception's current location was. Deception hadn't gotten anything from his trip to the marketplace. Afterwards, he made an all-out effort to rush to the teleport formation. No one liked wasting time traveling, so the faster they ran, the better. As a result, the Heavenly Justice players on the lookout for Deception quickly lost him. They couldn't keep up. I hope he doesn't go somewhere else, Ye Xiu muttered. After looking at the map, Lord Grim found a suitable location to camp. Over here, he could see all three possible routes Deception could take, and it wasn't conspicuous either. Ye Xiu not being familiar with the terrain didn't hinder him from using the terrain to his advantage. He surveyed the terrain and utilized it accordingly, treating it as if it were an away match. He should be here soon. Ye Xiu looked at the time. If Deception were rushing over, Ye Xiu should be able to see him any time now. He had Lord Grim look around, but there was no sign of Deception approaching. Maybe he isn't coming this way. Maybe he's just slow, Ye Xiu thought, but he didn't leave the spot. After waiting for a while longer, a figure could be seen sprinting along one of the three routes. Ye Xiu readied Lord Grim to act at any moment. Soon, the name on that figure could be seen clearly. It was Deception. His running speed even felt a bit slow in Ye Xiu's eyes. Deception didn't seem to be aware that there was danger hidden nearby. He was just like a normal player passing by. He didn't look around to see if there was anything unusual around him. When he arrived at the end of the street, he ran straight for the teleport formation. Bang! A gunshot rang out. During this time of war, a single gunshot was insignificant. They were outside of the city, so there were skills and curses flying around everywhere. The players who were online were pretty much used to this environment. However, this gunshot was loud and clear to Deception. He deserved to be an infamous scrap picker. Deception had actually noticed the shot was aimed at him. He stepped to the side and the bullet whizzed past him. Not bad. After hearing this remark, Deception saw a top-heavy bottom-like creature jump in front of his character. This creature's appearance was too eye-catching. Even Deception couldn't help but be drawn to it before he noticed the character's id, Lord Grim. Deception had played the game for many years already. He had been in constant danger throughout his career. He wasn't just any ordinary scrap picker. Most scrap pickers didn't survive after scrap picking. For them, the longer they lived, the more items they could pick up. Deception valued his life very much. There were a lot of scrap-picking opportunities in the fights between the top guilds, and Deception obviously took advantage of these opportunities. Thus, he had seen many in-game experts before. However, he had never met anyone as skilled as Lord Grim before. Deception didn't have much confidence in a real 1v1 fight with him. Now that he had been targeted by him, Deception panicked a bit, but the teleport formation was just up ahead. As long as he could get there, he would be able to leave Darkness City. Lord Grim definitely wouldn't know where he would be heading either. Since he wasn't planning on fighting a life-or-death match, Deception was just going to charge his way past Lord Grimm. He didn't say anything and focused on escaping. He started with a shadow clone technique. It would be best to create a gap between them before doing anything else. His clone was left behind as his real body instantly moved ahead, but instead of seeing a clear path ahead, he saw a poof of smoke in front of him. Shadow clone technique. I can do that too. The other side didn't seem to need to see clearly as he attacked him. Deception hastily jumped backwards. The other side did a flip and began to fire bullets at him. Deception was quick, though. He swung his ninja blade and guarded against the bullets. The myriad manifestations umbrella was flung open. Deception had just wiped some sweat off his face when he heard another bang. The tip of the umbrella lit up, shooting 3 missiles at him. A missile's attack range was far greater than a spear's. Using a dagger to block it just wasn't going to happen. Guarding would be a pointless action. But what other option did Deception have? He had none. Being able to put the dagger in front of his body to block the missile was already quite impressive. How could he have known that, in that short amount of time, the other side would strike him with a sword, stab with him a spear, and shoot him with missiles? The explosion from the anti-tank missiles engulfed Deception. The shockwave threw Deception into a wall. There were 2 other players fighting below the wall. They weren't too surprised seeing someone get blasted over here, but when they glanced at him, they noticed he didn't have a guild tag above his head. He was by himself, so they ignored him. Deception slid down the wall. When he thought back on what had just happened, not only did his shadow clone technique not get him any closer to the teleport formation, it had actually caused him to end up farther away. Directly use a high-leveled skill. Deception immediately began forming the hand seals for Shadow Dance. He saw that there was still some distance between him and Lord Grimm. He felt like even with those long-range attacks, he would be able to complete the seals in time. One advantage of playing as a ninja was that forming seals didn't affect their movement speed. Even the Elementalist's mobile cast reduced the Elementalist's movement speed drastically when it was used. Ninjas didn't need to worry about such life-threatening danger. Deception's hands and legs moved in a blur. He dodged left and right. He also hoped Lord Grimm's attacks would hit other players, but how could Ye Xiu make such rookie mistakes? Even so, because of this, his long-ranged attacks weren't as effective as he wanted them to be. He wasn't able to interrupt Deception's hand seals. Ninjutsu Shadow Dance. Deception instantly split into 10 clones. All of them moved as if they were real, but when Deception turned around, where had Lord Grimm disappeared to? FCK, Lord Grimm had ignored his clones. He ran straight to the teleport formation as if he were planning on guarding the entrance. Would that work? Deception didn't think so. The closer Lord Grimm was to the teleport formation, the more advantageous it was for him. With so many clones rushing towards him, he doubted Lord Grimm had the ability to block all 10 of them. As long as one made it over, wouldn't he be fine? Deception thought of this and planned on having all of his clones swarm over, but in that instant he suddenly realized, how did all of my clones get attacked? Tusk, it seems like you're not experienced enough. Lord Grimm's voice rang. Deception was depressed. When his shadow dance finished and his clones beautifully spread apart, the surrounding players had misunderstood. With so many clones around them, how could they not defend against them? As a result, they attacked them before saying anything. For that one moment, Deception had become everyone's enemy. The surrounding players just attacked whatever clone was nearby. Deception had wanted Lord Grimm to aggro everyone with his long-ranged attacks. Who would have thought that he would be the one to aggro everyone with his shadow dance? Deception wasn't the type of person who would try to explain the situation. Even if he did, no one would believe him. He immediately had his clones charge towards the teleport formation and ignored the surrounding players. There were just too many enemies, which made it difficult for Deception to handle. Ye Xiu wasn't going to play nice either. Just as Deception was having a hard time, Lord Grim attacked. He sent one flying away with a falling flower palm, threw another one with a fling, repelled a different one far away. He always attacked whenever Deception had openings. Shortly afterwards, Deception soon discovered something. Where did all of my clones go? With this distance? Poo 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 poo. Half of his clones went poof. Lord Grim had scattered them too far apart. No matter which heart he chose, they wouldn't be able to cover the entire situation. To think his shadow dance would be broken just like that. Deception still wanted to try with the remaining half, but he immediately realized that it wouldn't work. If the remaining half of shadow clones rushed forward one after the other, Lord Grim would have enough time to send them flying away one at a time again. If they had rushed forward in a swarm, the skill's duration would run out before the strategy would be a success. And just like this, Shadow Dance became useless. The King's Avatar Chapter 667, all of Deception's clones disappeared because the skill duration had ended. The good news was that all the aggroed players had realized those clones hadn't been targeting them, so they didn't attack him. If not, they would have kept chasing him forever. His real body would have nowhere to run. Ninjutsu 100 streams. Deception still wanted charge through. He cast another skill and 100 streams of water leaped towards Lord Grim to block his path. Just this attack alone posed no threat to Ye Xiu. He easily sidestepped it. Deception moved in the opposite direction and threw a smoke bomb. Deception's ninja sense was quite good. After using all of his ninja tools at Darkness City, he had immediately restocked his ninja tools after reviving. Purple smoke billowed outwards. This was one area where Smoke Bomb was better than the Spitfire's Smoke Bullet. The former's effects took place extremely quickly compared to the latter. In return, Smoke Bomb's area of effect was much smaller than Smoke Bullet. Deception merely wanted to use the smoke bomb to act as a wall, so that Lord Grim wouldn't know which direction he was heading. As soon as he saw the purple smoke appeared, Deception immediately began moving, when he suddenly heard a loud rumble above him. He tilted his head upwards and he saw Lord Grim with a propeller rotating above his head. He had used rotor wings to float over the purple smoke. Deception's sneaky movements could clearly be seen. At this moment, Deception truly felt like an idiot. Lord Grim had the rotor wings dive down and retract in midair. A sword light flashed. Right when Deception dodged, he heard a boom. An explosion from below his feet sent him tumbling away. Deception tilted his head down to look down. Only a few remnant of scattered rocks could be seen. Even so, he recognized it as the mechanic's machine trace. Why didn't I see it? Deception wanted to cry. It was because it had come out of the purple smoke. When he threw the smoke bomb, his own vision had been blocked as well, allowing the opponent to utilize it. Because of this explosion, Deception had to stabilize himself. He couldn't dodge Lord Grim's falling light blade as a result and crashed into the ground. He immediately recovered after landing, but Lord Grim had already rushed over. Lord Grim used a falling flower palm and sent Deception flying away from the teleport formation. I can't beat him. Deception started to have thoughts of retreating. His own skills had been used against him as a cover for his opponent's sneak attack. It truly made Deception feel defeated. If I can't beat him, then I should run. Deception had quite the natural gift when it came to preserving his life. Once he made his decision, as he fell to the ground, instead of heading towards the teleport formation, he turned around and ran. Ye Xiu's Lord Grim naturally chased after him. His appearance looked funny, but the stats were no laughing matter. Ye Xiu was confident that his movement speed was enough to deal with Deception. When he chased after him, he felt like Deception's speed was a bit slow. Deception wasn't just running to his next destination. He was running for his life. Ye Xiu had a hard time understanding, but after looking carefully at Deception, he noticed that his equipment was a bit strange. Only now did he suddenly remember that, when Deception died, he had dropped 2 pieces of equipment. Lulan Slash had regarded it in disdain, but it was still a rare piece of equipment amongst normal players. Those 2 pieces of equipment probably gave him some movement speed bonuses. Without them now, of course Deception's movement speed would be affected. With his advantage, Ye Xiu wasn't any under pressure. He wasn't in a hurry either. He chased after Deception, all the while firing at him. Deception didn't really have much of a plan. He just knew that he couldn't charge through to the teleport formation, so he wanted to rely on his speed to shrug Lord Grimm off. He originally had confidence, but as he ran, Lord Grimm kept following behind him, neither too far nor too close. Lord Grimm occasionally fired a few shots, annoying him very much. From the looks of it, Lord Grimm probably had energy to spare. Was Lord Grimm just playing with him? Deception turned his head in despair. Lord Grimm's funny-looking appearance. It really was eye-catching, but at this moment, Deception finally noticed that he had switched equipment. It's over. I probably don't have the movement speed advantage anymore. Deception immediately thought of this point. The other side was chasing after him in a very relaxed manner. If he couldn't rely on his movement speed to shrug him off, his only choice was to hide. As a result, Deception began climbing over walls and crawling through holes and tunnels. He tried to use whatever he could to block his pursuer's line of sight, but none of it worked. Several minutes passed. Lord Grimm was still following after him. Deception couldn't shrug him off or beat him in a fight. Lord Grimm never got too close either. Maybe that's the limit of his movement speed and it happens to be the same as mine, so he can't actually catch me, Deception thought. If that's the case, then I just need to be patient. Deception didn't give up. He was frequently had to wait for opportunities to come when scrap picking, so he had quite a lot of perseverance and patience. What Deception didn't know was that Lord Grimm had another reason for not catching up to him. Okay, me and Steamed Bun are here. Tang Ru messaged Ye Xiu. Oh, then let's begin. Ye Xiu replied and had Lord Grimm suddenly speed up. Deception had been planning on being patient when he suddenly heard footsteps getting closer to him. Is it that guy? Deception was startled. He couldn't help but turn his head to look. It really was him. Lord Grimm was suddenly starting to get closer and closer to him. Deception used every trick he knew, but none of them worked. Lord Grimm caught up to him every time and was constantly getting nearer and nearer. Shuriken, Shadow Clone Technique, Caltrops. None of these skills stopped Lord Grimm from closing in. Hand Seals. Deception began forming hand seals. He once again used Shadow Dance, this time when his shadow clones appeared. Deception immediately pounced towards Lord Grimm. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos to find a character that Lord Grimm failed to notice and sneak out, but on his way here, Deception knew that he had to use the terrain effectively. Shadow Dance. Deception really liked to use this move. It was no wonder that he was quite good with it, but in front of Ye Xiu he was still too green. For Ye Xiu, it was wishful thinking if Deception wanted to use these shadow clones to bother him. He used a few skills and easily sent the few shadow clones around him flying away. When Ye Xiu looked around, he quickly noticed the clone trying to sneak away. At this moment, Deception realized that he had been completely seen through. With a gunshot, that sneaky clone was hit in the butt and Deception's heart hit rock bottom. He knew that his move had once again been seen through and dismantled. The heart of Shadow switched. He controlled his clones and looked for a different direction, where Lord Grimm wasn't paying too much attention to. Found it. Deception saw an opening and immediately switched his heart of Shadow over. He hastily tried to run. This time, Lord Grimm directly used a shadow clone technique to block his path. Was this because this opening had been a trap, or because Lord Grimm had insanely fast reaction speed? Deception didn't know, but Lord Grimm blocking his path in front of him was a reality. Run! He immediately switched hearts, but his shadow clones suddenly disappeared. The skill duration had ended again. Deception had been so busy figuring a way out that he had forgotten something as important as this. Such a low-leveled mistake shouldn't happen to an expert. What's the point in scrap picking all day? Is this really how you make your living? Ye Xiu asked. It was a rare opportunity for them to meet face to face. Deception turned around and wanted to run. This time, Lord Grimm closed in on him. Ye Xiu wouldn't give him an opportunity to escape. His myriad manifestations' umbrella opened up and he immediately attacked. Deception wasn't able to block it and it became a life-and-death battle. Deception's health rapidly fell. He struggled and struggled instead of leaving his computer like he had last time, when he had been surrounded by heavenly justice. However, it was futile. The usual moves that worked against other players all seemed like child's play to Lord Grimm, who easily dealt with them. You've got so much talent. Scrap picking is just a waste. You should be using your talent in the right places. Ye Xiu beat him up while talking the entire duration of the beating. Deception was about to go crazy. The finals are taking place right now. Do you even know what that is? Ye Xiu said. Lord Grimm's spear stabbed through Deception's body. It's a competition between the best players and characters in all of glory, Ye Xiu continued. You don't even know that. You're like an expert who knows nothing about the outside world. Lord Grimm sent Deception crashing into a wall. What does any of that have to do with me? Even though Deception's face was sliding down the wall, it didn't stop him from talking. I'm forming a team right now. Would you like to join? There will be a salary as well as living accommodations included. As Ye Xiu beat him, he sent him an invite. He was acting like a bandit from the water margins. What are you talking about? Deception clearly didn't appreciate this bandit's conduct. You're skilled. Picking up trash for a living is too much of a waste of that skill. Ye Xiu said. What I pick up is never trash, Deception said. Tusk. Ye Xiu looked down at him in disdain. That's because you've never seen the really good stuff. Such as the weapon in my hands. Have you ever seen one like it before? Ye Xiu said. Deception had obviously never seen it before, but then again, Ye Xiu's umbrella was a bit too much. No one in glory would have ever seen this weapon before. This is what you call top quality. Pick it up and you'll see. Ye Xiu said. This is. Bang. Deception was once again hit, but this time he didn't stand back up. Oops. Ye Xiu was startled. He died. I was too focused on talking and didn't pay attention to his health. He seemed like he wanted to say something. Ye Xiu muttered the King's Avatar chapter 668. Deception died. His ghost floated around. The drop rates from Peking and the heavenly domain lived up to its reputation. When he died, another piece of his equipment dropped. The ghost Deception could only quietly watch as Lord Grimm take his equipment away. Deception had been mentally prepared. Even though he was sad about his death, he wasn't too angry either. Soon afterwards, he chose to revive. When he revived, Deception checked his inventory. He had lost a leg armor piece and a pendant in the Darkness Palace, which he made up for with some make-do equipment. This time, he had dropped a ring. Good. It wasn't too painful of a loss. Losing equipment would always be painful. Deception could only console himself with the 3 materials on him. What do I do now? Is that guy still going to be guarding the teleport formation? Deception thought. He didn't take any of what Ye Xiu had just said to heart. However, what he didn't know was that the moment he died, Ye Xiu messaged Tang Ru and Steamed Bun. I'm here, I'm here. I'm watching the place closely. Steamed Bun immediately began looking around the revival point. Finding Deception at the revival point wasn't easy. There was a world war going on, so the revival point was very busy. Not only were there a lot of players reviving, there were also a lot of players fighting around it. These players were similar to Tang Ru and Steamed Bun, and had come to the revival point to chase after and kill more players. All of the revival points in the cities had turned into intense battlefields. Even though the revival point wasn't a safe area, a revived player would be protected by the system for a brief duration. It was similar to logging on. During this brief duration, the character would be protected from all damage they received, but the character also wouldn't be able to deal damage. After Deception revived, he checked his inventory to console himself while running out of this revival point. If not, when the system's protection wore off, while the players might not be aiming for him, it was hard to avoid taking splash damage. Tang Ru and Steamed Bun saw the chaos around the revival point and obviously wouldn't look for trouble. The two characters watched from the edges of the battlefield. Over here, over here, over here, Steamed Bun messaged Tang Ru. Which way is over here? Tang Ru said helplessly, coordinates. No response. Tang Ru turned her head to look at Steamed Bun's screen. Steamed Bun and Deception had already started fighting with each other. Tang Ru checked the coordinates and had soft mist rush over. You forfeit your life, Steamed Bun shouted as he lifted the brick in his hand. Deception looked and immediately recognized that the other side had set up an ambush here beforehand. He was quite annoyed. When the brick flew at him, he tilted his head to dodge it. The brick whooshed past him and slammed into the back of a Blue Brook Guild player in the midst of a battle. Steamed Bun hadn't considered whether a mistake on his part would pull aggro. He only reacted after the injuries had already been made. Oops! Steamed Bun shouted. He crouched down in an attempt to hide from the other side. In reality, the battlefield at the revival point was so chaotic that if an accidental attack occurred, the player hit by it could only consider himself unlucky. The player didn't even have time to bicker. Deception saw this scene and thought about how stupid Steamed Bun must be. He immediately turned around to leave. He had no plans on fighting him. Steamed Bun saw that the person he accidentally hit wasn't going to look for trouble, so he focused again. He shouted, "Don't run!" Steamed Bun shot forward. His character flew through the air as his two legs headed for Deception. Brawler skill, powerful knee strike. Brawlers had a street-style way of fighting. Sand toss, brick, and poison needle skills were all dirty fighting moves. Skills such as powerful knee strike and tyrannical chain punch showed their violent and unrestrained fighting style. This powerful knee strike was fast and fierce, but Steamed Bun liked to talk when he attacked. Deception heard his loud shout and turned around to look. When he saw the two legs flying towards him, he immediately dodged it. Steamed Bun missed and landed on the ground. He got up and charged at Deception. Deception quickly formed a hand seal. His character instantly tunneled into the ground to dodge Steamed Bun's charge. Then he drilled out of the earth and stabbed towards Steamed Bun invasion. Steamed Bun reacted fast. He had Steamed Bun invasion swing his arms horizontally to block it. His arms hit Deception's hands and knocked them aside, successfully defending against the stab. Brawler skill, Tiger flips the mountain. The skill name sounded very intelligent, but players like to call it Protect My Face. From its nickname, it could be seen that it was just a simple defensive move used in the streets. Of course, the game wasn't going to call it something as lame as Protect My Face. That just wouldn't be right. After having his dagger blocked, Deception leapt up and used a bird fall from high in the air. His 2 feet stepped on Steamed Bun Invasion's shoulder. With a whoosh, he flew past Steamed Bun Invasion. Even though these guys were quite good, they were much easier to deal with compared to Lord Grimm. Right when Deception thought in this way, he heard a pow. His head had been smashed in by a brick. Being hit by a brick from behind had a 100% chance of inducing a 0.4-second stun. This meant that even though Deception was still in midair, he would be stunned. Characters in a stunned state couldn't use skills or make any movements, so he crashed headfirst into the ground. FCK, Deception was sad. Why did this guy like bricks so much? He wasn't using it intelligently either. He just used it as soon as it came off cooldown. Even so, he had been hit from behind. Deception was furious. Fortunately, he had been in midair previously. Even though he lost his balance from the stun, he had still been able to gain some distance. He took some damage from the fall, but the stun wore off fairly quickly. Deception got up and threw a shuriken. Only then did he adjust his camera. FCK, the person moving towards him wasn't steamed bun invasion. Battle mage. Dragon breaks the ranks. Tang Ru's soft mist had finally arrived. Shurikens could briefly stun a target, so it was good at interrupting spells, but it was worthless in front of Dragon breaks the ranks, which gave the user super armor. Apart from grabs, no other skill could interrupt it. The shurikens hit soft mist and did negligible damage, but it wouldn't stop her from activating the skill. Skills with super armor were equally tyrannical. In the blink of an eye, soft mist closed in on him. Her spear ripped through the wind as it penetrated Deception's body. Deception was sent flying. Soft Mist was a physical-oriented battle mage, so Dragon Breaks the Ranks was utilized to its maximum potential. Tang Ru never let up in a battle, though. She followed up with a rising dragon soars the sky. Her spear transformed into a dragon, which shot towards Deception and devoured him. The magic undulations poured into Deception in a burst of colors. I feel like he's much weaker now, Steamed Bun said from the sidelines. It's probably because you have better equipment now, Tang Ru said. Oh, right, Steamed Bun realized. Following afterwards, the two coordinated with each other and Deception's bitter days had truly come. He didn't even plan on fighting them anymore. He just wanted to escape, but now that they had switched equipment, their strength had improved significantly. Deception could no longer handle both of them together. He had also lost experience and equipment. He had 3 mismatched pieces of equipment and his stats had been reduced to that of a level 69. Do we just kill him? Steamed Bun asked. Probably. Tang Ru wasn't sure. Let me ask. Steamed Bun stood up and shouted. Senior, do we kill him? Huh. Ye Xiu jumped up in surprise at Steamed Bun's sudden shout. His Lord Grim was heading towards the revival point, but it seemed like Steamed Bun and Tang Ru were fine on their own. I was just talking with him to see if he wanted to join us. How about you keep asking him? Ye Xiu asked. Understood. Steamed Bun sat down and immediately said, Punk, what a rare opportunity. Our senior actually recognizes your skill. Have considered his offer. Consider my ass. When did I say I would consider it? Deception was being hunted down repeatedly. How could he be in a good mood? He also couldn't beat his enemies. This type of powerlessness was very frustrating. Why aren't you talking? Are you thinking about it? Is 3 seconds long enough? Steamed Bun said. 1, 2, 3, Steamed Bun counted. You're still not talking. Is 3 seconds not enough? Then how many seconds do you need? Steamed Bun asked. Enough, Deception couldn't help but shout. If it's enough, then where's your answer? Steamed Bun said. I'm saying I've had enough of your chattering, Deception said. Then did you think about it? Steamed Bun asked. Deception was speechless. He wasn't the talkative type, let alone keeping up with Steamed Bun's thought process. He's about to die, Tang Ru reminded. Hurry, drink some potions, Steamed Bun hastily urged Deception. Deception wanted to cry. In order to survive, he had chugging potions, but potions had cooldowns. They were on cooldown right now. Did you think I didn't want to drink more? Tang Ru felt like Steamed Bun's way of speaking was completely brainless, so she explained. We're planning on forming a team. Are you interested in joining us? Not interested, Deception ground his teeth. Okay, Tang Ru replied. She attacked and ended Deception's misery. Deception had wanted to say something. His character died though, so his voice didn't come out. His ghost floated around again. Deception was speechless. This sister was so ruthless. Afterwards, Deception saw Steamed Bun Invasion run forward and pick up something from his corpse. Another piece of equipment. Lost. The King's Avatar Chapter 669. Deception's corpse lay on the ground. He chose not to revive. He knew that the other side wouldn't leave just like that. He couldn't beat them, nor could he run away from them. If he revived, it would just be a never-ending loop. It seemed like logging off was the most appropriate choice in this situation. However, Deception wasn't willing to. He had played this game for so long, and he had aggroed a lot of players during his scrap-picking career. It wasn't his first time dying, but it was certainly his first time being camped at the revival point and being unable to escape from them. But what could he do? He couldn't beat them. He truly didn't have the ability. Let alone Lord Grimm, fighting even steamed bun or soft mist was hard enough. With those two fighting him together, Deception couldn't see any chance of winning. He had always played alone, so he didn't have any friends in the game. If he were any other player, most of them would have called their friends to help them escape by now. Seeing how Soft Mist and Steamed Bun were still standing there, checking that his corpse hadn't turned into a gravestone, Deception knew that they weren't planning on leaving. I guess I should log off. Deception didn't have any other choice. He could only log off. By the time Lord Grimm arrived, his corpse still hadn't turned into a tombstone, but it had already disappeared, indicating that he was offline. He escaped, Steamed Bun sighed with regret. What did he say in the end? Ye Xiu asked. He said and then he died. Steamed Bun described it vividly. He even had his Steamed Bun invasion lay on the ground as if he had truly died. Ye Xiu couldn't do anything about it. Lord Grimm turned around and faced Soft Mist. I asked if he was interested in joining us. He said no. Tang Ru said. Tusk. Ye Xiu sighed. It seemed like getting Deception to join wasn't going to be an easy task. The key point was that he wasn't an ordinary player either. If a normal player got an invite to join a pro team, the player would be extraordinarily happy. Even if the player couldn't accept it because of his family or some other reason, every player desired to be a pro player, but this Deception only scap-picked and didn't seem to care about anything else in the world. Ye Xiu wasn't sure how to persuade someone like him. There weren't any players in the pro scene who liked to scrap-pick. How tiring. Just as he was sighing, the door to the practice room opened and Chen Guo came in out of breath. The finals were the finals after all. Even though Excellent Era wasn't playing, Happy Internet Cafe was still packed. Any team that entered the finals would have plenty of fans. When the first round of the finals ended, Samsara celebrated, while Blue Rain cried. The fans of the two teams taunting each other was hard to avoid. Fortunately, the fans were reasonable enough and nothing escalated too chaotically. However, keeping everything under control was still exhausting work. It hadn't been easy getting everyone to leave. During that time, they had defeated 2 guilds, killed a boss, and killed Deception twice. Today's match was pretty good. Chen Guo was obviously here to discuss the match with them. Chen Guo didn't care too much about either team, but it was still an intense and entertaining match. Yeah, Ye Xiu answered. Chen Guo looked at the practice room. Something wasn't right. None of them had the excitement that they should have had after watching such a brilliant match. Even though she had come late and they had already finished discussing it, shouldn't they still have a happy expression on them? What's wrong? Chen Guo walked around in a circle questioningly. Ye Xiu, Tang Ru, and Steamed Bun weren't doing anything right now. Only Wei Chen was busy. Truthfully, when Ye Xiu and the others had defeated the 2 guilds and killed Deception, Wei Chen's shouting was louder than their own. Wei Chen was participating in the World War, and as Samsara's second elite group leader, wherever the battle was cruel and intense, he would have to appear there. When Chen Guo turned to look at Wei Chen's screen, she saw all sorts of skills flying around everywhere. Wei Chen's warlock was running around amidst the chaos. All of the players around him had guild tags of the top guilds. Chen Guo had been monitoring the situation downstairs. There was no way she would know about what was happening in the game. What's going on? Are they fighting for a wild boss? Chen Guo asked. They're fighting, Ye Xiu said. What do you mean? The fires from the finals have reached the game, Ye Xiu said. How exciting. Chen Guo immediately turned on a computer and logged into the game. Ye Xiu had just got in contact with Lulan Slash. Deception had logged off. Ye Xiu and the others couldn't stay there guarding the entire time, so they asked Lulan Slash for help to pay special attention to his whereabouts. Okay, I got it. When Lulan heard deception had already died twice, had been forced to log off, and Ye Xiu still wasn't done, he deeply felt that offending this god was a very scary matter. When this god pursued and killed players, he did so with everything he had. Chen Guo's chasing haze entered the game. She walked around and naturally saw the battles going on everywhere. These battles had started since the end of the first round of the finals. Now they had reached their peak. Walking around on the street wasn't so bad, though. The players feeling it the most were the elites of the club guilds, such as Wei Chen. They were fighting non-stop without rest. As for Ye Xiu and the others, Lulan had gotten them new equipment. They were max-leveled and max-skilled. Getting better equipment from the game than what they had now was pointless. No equipment in the game could compare to those in the pro scene. In order to get to a pro level, they would have to create their own equipment, which required wild bosses. Ye Xiu hoped for Lulan to message him about bosses, but there just weren't any more spawning right now. Without anything to do, Ye Xiu led Tang Ru and Steamed Bun around to form a 3-player scrap-picking team. Correct. Right after killing the infamous scrap-picker deception, Ye Xiu and the others went to go scrap-picking. With a huge war going on, there were plenty of opportunities to pick up scraps. However, even a master scrap-picker like Deception didn't dare to rashly move, and instead went to Darkness Palace to do something. This only showed how difficult scrap-picking would be right now. However, there would always be players who welcomed challenges. With the fires of war spreading everywhere, it was sometimes hard to tell who was there to fight and who was there to pick up scraps. These fights were because of the competition between the pro teams. Players with the club guild tags on them were only a very small portion of the fans. Those with guilds and those without guilds participated in this war regardless. Ye Xiu and the others really had nothing to do without any wild bosses out there. A training perspective, letting Tang Ru and Steamed Bun participate in these chaotic battles would be good practice. Facing Ye Xiu's logical and confident words, Chen Guo had no way of arguing against him. Because they would be regarding this as training, they would obviously go to the most difficult places to scrap pick. "Old Wei, where are you?" Ye Xiu asked. "Ah, what did you say? Speak louder," Wei Chen roared. "I'm saying, where are you?" Ye Xiu shouted. "Oh, you're talking." Wei Chen turned his head over. "Stop talking nonsense. Who else in the game would call you Old Wei?" Ye Xiu asked. "I'm feeling a bit dizzy. What is it?" Wei Chen had only glanced at Ye Xiu before focusing on the game again. "I'm asking, where are you?" Ye Xiu asked. Instead of waiting for Wei Chen to reply, he just looked at Wei Chen's screen. A few seconds after Ye Xiu finished looking, Wei Chen suddenly replied, "Why don't you look yourself?" Busy. Wei Chen was truly too busy. He was responsible for leading the group as well as his own character. He had to do 2 things at once. With Ye Xiu being the third, he had a difficult time managing everything. After Ye Xiu checked for himself, he notified Tang Ru and Steamed Bun. The 3 of them immediately set out. Chen Guo wanted to participate too, but seeing how chaotic the battle was from Wei Chen's screen, Chen Guo felt like it would be best if she didn't become a burden. A few minutes later, Wei Chen suddenly said, "You're coming over to do what?" "Scrap pick." Ye Xiu confirmed that Wei Chen was talking to him and replied back, "FCK, why, what's there to pick up?" Wei Chen had left the pro scene a long time ago and his perspective had gone back to a normal player's perspective. But now that he planned on going back to the pro scene, his perspective quickly changed back. None of the equipment in the game was worth squat. It's a rare opportunity. We might not get anything useful, but it will still be good for the guild storage. We'll have to form a guild sooner or later, Ye Xiu said. Wei Chen didn't refute his statement. How could he not know about the importance of a guild for their team? In the early days of the pro scene, the pro players had to manage the guild as well as practice. During Wei Chen's time as a pro, he had done both too. Speaking of which, Wei Chen was having trouble adapting to the current structure, where pro players put all of their effort into their own matches. He always felt like pro players, who completely threw the game aspect aside, weren't reliable. Ye Xiu and the other two soon arrived at the battlefield. There were corpses and gravestones littered all over the ground, but this also made it easier for Ye Xiu and the others to find dropped equipment. 7 o'clock. Coordinates 25,865, 45,726. Grab that weapon, Ye Xiu ordered, and the three began their scrap-picking journey. Little Tang, don't keep fighting. Ye Xiu had said these words who knew how many times. When Tang Ru fought against someone, she would sometimes get too engrossed in it. Steamed bun, don't pick up that one. It's worthless. Ye Xiu often had to remind Steamed Bun this. Steamed Bun would put whatever equipment he found into his inventory. Okay, that's good enough, let's go. Once they filled up their inventories, Ye Xiu hastily had them leave the battle. Right after they stored these pieces of equipment in their storages, they received a message from Lulen/ about a wild boss. Let's go. The three changed directions, heading towards a different map. These are the three main tasks that we will be doing in the near future, Ye Xiu said in a serious tone. Scrap picking, killing bosses, and killing deception. The King's Avatar. Thank you for listening to the story on KevinAudio.com. Chapter 670. The news of another level 70 boss excited Lulen/. His gloominess over losing 3 uncommon materials to deception had diminished significantly. Taking advantage while the top guilds had no way of interfering in wild boss fights was certainly something to be happy about. These kinds of opportunities didn't come often. Wild bosses were one of the most important objectives for the club guilds. It wouldn't be too excessive to say that it was their reasons for existing. After contacting Ye Xiu, who replied that he would immediately head out, Lulen/ felt at ease. The battle at Darkness Palace had proven that a god leading a group battle could turn the situation from a disaster to a walk in the park. In the beginning, Lulen/ had even been worried Ye Xiu's individual influence would be too insignificant to matter. While he was happy about this point, Lulen/ couldn't help but worry about the future of his team. If a god's ability to lead a team was this incredible, what about us? How will we beat him? Lulen/ was both happy and unhappy. The first pro player he bumped into was a top-of-the-top player. The bad part was that Ye Xiu became his reference, crushing Lulen/ and his team's confidence. They often realized things afterwards that only made it worse for them. Lulen/ felt like he was already forcing himself with Team Heavenly Swords, but giving up now wasn't a possibility. At this point, he had abandoned his initial ambitious hopes and shifted towards a more stable approach. When Ye Xiu came over, he came over with 3 others instead of 2. Chen Guo could also follow them and participate. It wasn't like Chen Guo had no experience hunting level 70 wild bosses, but her experiences could be summarized as, hey, there's a boss, let's go try and kill it, and then die to the boss. A wild boss wasn't something that could be beaten by a random group of players. Even the elite groups of the top guilds would die to them from time to time. So to be more accurate, Chen Gu had never killed a wild boss herself, but rather had been killed by one. Now that there was an opportunity to kill one, she obviously wanted a part of the glory. The wild boss was the World Tree's forest guardian Vich. Vich was a complicated boss. Its skills spanned through all of the classes. He used a rifle and could utilize any of the gunner class skills. Apart from that, he was also proficient in traps from the thief class. There were often traps hidden all over the forest, making it very frustrating for players to explore the map. Apart from these 2 attack methods, Vich could also use cleric spells, a boss that could heal himself. This was undoubtedly very troublesome for players. Interrupting his heals were crucial to hunting him down. For the club guilds, winning control of the boss was most important. Killing the boss itself wasn't too big of an issue for them. However, Heavenly Justice didn't have any experience killing wild bosses. Lulan Slash was quite worried about a difficult boss like Vich. The god Ye Xiu was in charge of PvP, while he was responsible for killing the boss itself. How do we actually kill this boss? He was currently looking up guides as references. If the god successfully completed his task and beat the other guilds, and his group ended up getting wiped by the boss, how shameful would that be? If he also needed to rely on Ye Xiu to kill the boss, Lulan Slash would feel too ashamed to ask him for half of the materials. He felt extremely uneasy. In the end, Lulan Slash felt like he should ask Ye Xiu to teach him. "Oh, you've never killed it before," Ye Xiu said. "Yeah," Lulan Slash replied. "Let me see," Ye Xiu said. "What? To kill this boss, there are a few key things to be wary of," Ye Xiu said. "Oh," Lulan Slash hastily grabbed a pen and prepared to write everything down. "Pay attention to the positions of your troops. They can never be in a straight line because Vich uses a rifle. Along with the power of a wild boss, he has the ability to have his shots penetrate multiple targets." "Got it," Lulan Slash replied, but he didn't write anything down. This boss also has traps, especially huge AI poison and ice explosions. If players get hit, you have to make sure to heal them as soon as possible. Ice is mainly for control purposes. Its damage isn't so bad. But for huge AI explosions, a single person stepping on a trap could affect a huge area. So when an ice explosion occurs, you have to control the boss's pathing well. If the boss makes some unexpected move during this time, your players might not be able to react because of the ice explosion hindering their movements. One way to deal with this is to intentionally step on an ice trap when the situation is still under control, and then everyone can just stand still and attack, Ye Xiu said. Okay, is there more? Lulan Slash asked. More, the boss can also heal. Make sure you have some troops responsible for interrupting his casts, Ye Xiu said. And Lulan Slash was still asking. He hadn't written anything down yet. He realized that everything Ye Xiu had said was straight from the guide. And Ye Xiu asked himself. After a while he said, "That's it." "That's all written in the guide," Lulan Slash said. "You've looked over the guide already. Then why'd you ask me?" Ye Xiu said. Lulan Slash coughed blood. "I didn't feel very confident after reading the guide, so I thought I should ask you. Apart from the content in the guide, are there any other details or techniques I should know about?" Lulan Slash was patient, but the god's reply was devastating. "How would I know? I've never fought against it before either." Lulan Slash wanted to cry. They were all noobs here. They didn't have anyone with experience. After listening to Lulan Slash's questioning, Ye Xiu could tell. "Are you afraid that you can't kill the boss?" "Yeah," Lulan Slash replied. The fight against Darkness Palace's night streak had scared everyone witless. If not, how else could Lulan Slash have been assassinated by deception? It was because the battle had been so difficult that they were relieved after successfully killing Night Streak, giving deception an opening. Forest Guardian Vich was much more difficult to handle than Night Streak, giving Lulan Slash even less confidence in the fight. "Oh, are there any guilds around?" Ye Xiu asked. "Yeah, Conquering Cloud has already been seen," Lulan Slash said. "It's Conquering Cloud again." Clearly, it wasn't just Ye Xiu and Lulan Slash who wanted to take advantage while the top guilds were at war. These small club guilds wanted to seize this opportunity to grab some difficult-to-get resources. "Yeah. They haven't even recovered their lost experience yet and they're here," Lulan Slash said. Conquering Cloud had suffered huge losses and had even been pursued afterwards. Only a bit of time had passed, which wasn't enough for them to recover that 20% loss of experience. Lulan Slash's own stats were still red. He was level 70, but his stats were equivalent to characters at level 69. Even though his level hadn't changed, his stats were still lower, so people still called it a level drop. "That's a good thing you're even worried about that," Ye Xiu said. "I'm worried about the boss." Lulen said. I'm saying that since our opponents are weaker, why don't you go and deal with them while I kill the boss, Ye Xiu said. What if other guilds come? Lulen said. If it was just conquering clouds, he had confidence in winning, but he didn't have the skill to crush them with very few casualties. His group would certainly suffer a significant loss. If another fully prepared guild came, he wouldn't be able to stop them. Then it seems like we'll need to wait and control the situation at a later time, Ye Xiu said. Let them attack it first. Yeah, and then we'll kill the boss and everyone else at the same time, Ye Xiu said. It was quite a fierce method because, at a certain point, the first to act usually took the boss's aggro. Taking the aggro away from them using conventional methods wasn't likely. The only way was to completely wipe the other team or force them to leave, and then re-establish the boss's aggro. Apart from stopping the other side from taking the boss, it made the other side feel disgusted. Even long-time rivals wouldn't be so fierce as to use this method. After all, in this close circle, competition was important, but if you wanted to trade materials, you had to trade with someone. No. If you offended everyone, it wouldn't be helpful for your guild's development down the road. As a result, the club guilds often wouldn't be so impulsive like what other normal players might do in these situations. Whenever a club guild made a move, the guild held itself up to certain norms. This sort of method not only broke these norms, but there were other things to consider as well. Lulen had clearly thought about this before and hesitated towards Ye Xiu's suggestion. That's not too good, no. Oh, you want to leave some leeway, Ye Xiu said. Lulen could tell that it wasn't that Ye Xiu didn't know about the faults of this method, yet he still wanted to use such a fierce method. He thought about it again and realized, I'm such a pig. No matter how terrible their conduct is, the one to pay the price would be heavenly justice. Ye Xiu was currently working as a temporary worker. Once he finishes his task, he simply takes his portion of the materials and leaves. He won't have to bear any sort of enmity, so of course he'd want to use this method. Thinking of this possibility, Lulen rejected it and also said, if I do that, it'll come back to bite me in the future. No. That depends on how you do things. If we do it according to what you're thinking of, isn't that just who gets there first gets it? When did fighting for a wild boss ever follow the rules? Ye Xiu said. Then how should we go about doing it? You just need to give them the appropriate amount of face. Ye Xiu said. Give them the appropriate amount of face. For example, if we immediately go up, see them, intentionally not do anything, and then right when they're about to kill the boss, we suddenly kill them. That isn't good. However, we can wait outside of their sight for a while, pretend like we arrived late, and then attack them. No one can blame us in this scenario. Ye Xiu said. Is there a difference? Chen Guo asked when she heard Ye Xiu's explanation. The King's Avatar Chapter 671. There's a difference. The person who replied to Chen Guo wasn't Ye Xiu, but rather Lulen. His in-game tactical skills were just so-so in Ye Xiu's eyes, but his management ability was quite good. For example, he had seized several opportunities to maximize his team's publicity. He utilized everything he could use, taunting the other guilds and winning numerous fans. Now, for a sensitive and urgent issue like stealing wild bosses, he was suddenly not as arrogant as he had been when he had publicized the team. Instead, he hesitated. Lulen was someone who was proper. Snatching a wild boss wasn't the same as fighting a verbal battle. The materials dropped from wild bosses were crucial for self-made equipment, which determined the strength of a character, and the strength of a character influenced the strength of a team. The team's strength was the fundamental reason why clubs existed. Hurting someone else's wild boss was the same as hurting their reason for existence. How could there be no difference? This was why Lulen had hesitated towards this idea. He knew very well that flinging some words at the clubs and make them feel disgusted wasn't the same. Fighting for a boss required appropriate behavior. Correct. Appropriate behavior. Chen Guo felt like there was no difference between Ye Xiu's two suggestions, but Lulan immediately understood that one of these was much more appropriate. Waiting on the side and suddenly ambushing them, right when the other side was about to kill the boss, and hastily joining the battle after arriving late might seem like the same thing, but the former appeared intentional, while the latter didn't. Appearing intentional would portray them as unkind and savage. Alternately, appearing unintentional placed them within the norms. Thus, it didn't matter if you actually appeared late or not, you would have to do it that way. This was what Ye Xiu meant by pretending to arrive late. Lulan didn't need Ye Xiu to explain it to him, but it took Chen Guo quite a while to understand after listening to Ye Xiu's explanation. With the method decided, there was an art to arriving late. There was a fine line between the two methods. Everyone knew that inside and out, so if you wanted to pretend to arrive late, the other side wouldn't let you do that so easily. If you want to arrive late, you had to know their location, but what if you didn't have any information on them? Experienced clubs would definitely confirm the surroundings were safe before engaging a wild boss alone. They might even arrange for a fake group to misdirect others. The accuracy of their information was crucial for arriving late. Heavenly Justice still had members surveying the situation, but these eyes would certainly be killed off once the other side began attacking the boss. There were too many things to take care of when fighting against a wild boss. If it was just strength alone, the experience accumulated from thousands of years of struggles between mankind would be wasted. The small details involved were another part of the game. Lulan couldn't think of anything. In the end, he waited for Ye Xiu to suggest something. "I'll go," Ye Xiu sighed. At this moment, only an expert would be able to continue surveying the situation without being caught, and who here was more of an expert than Ye Xiu? Aren't you too noticeable?" Chen Guo said. "It doesn't matter who goes," Ye Xiu said, and then said to Lulan, "Keep on the lookout for those on the way here. See if any other guilds are also moving. There shouldn't just be one guild looking to take advantage of the situation." "Don't worry about that." Lulan had thought of it before and had already made arrangements. Having Ye Xiu tell him how to do everything was too shameful. However, even though he tried to avoid these situations, he was once again given a lesson by Ye Xiu. Lulan didn't know if he would ever graduate from this course, and at this moment, those at the front reported back. Conquering Cloud had gathered together and were about to start attacking the boss. Conquering Cloud didn't relax after seeing that there were no enemies nearby. They still dispatched players to clear the area. When they cleared the area, they didn't directly kill anyone. Instead, they gave a warning, saying that they were about to start killing a wild boss, and that they should stay away because it was dangerous. Of course, players could insist on staying. Even so, they wouldn't kill anyone. As club guilds, they had to pay attention to their public image, especially when they did things with their guild tags displayed. Then what do they do if the players insist on staying? They would take the next step and make it clear that wild bosses were difficult things to kill in glory. No one knows what might happen, so it would be best to be careful. Sometimes they might be more direct and make it even clearer that the battle can get chaotic. Not just the boss's attacks, but their attacks might accidentally hit you, so don't blame us for not telling you beforehand. It's not like we can add you into our group. At this point, if you weren't stupid, you would know what you had to do. If you still insisted on staying, they would definitely lose control of the situation and envelop any bystanders into the battle. Once that happened, they would express their apologies. Nicer groups might say, "We'll help you pick up your equipment when you die. Contact us to get it back." Lazier groups might not care. In any case, they were busy killing the wild boss. If they ignored the items that you dropped, that was also very reasonable too, no. The Heavenly Justice players at the front didn't have their guild tags next to them to avoid trouble with Conquering Clouds. Don't look at how a low-grade club guild like Conquering Clouds couldn't usually take any wild bosses. They would still follow these unwritten procedures. The players at the front clearly thought their troops would be arriving soon, so they insisted on staying. Conquering Cloud would naturally bring them into the battle and kill them accidentally, but when they messaged the guild leader, they received a reply telling them to retreat. What? We're not killing the boss. The information-gathering players were puzzled. There's been a change of plans. Lulan replied, come back. We're at 48,711, 49,128. Withdraw and meet up with us. The information-gathering players didn't know what was going on, so they followed orders and left. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm was currently rushing over to the boss's last known location. Usually, while clearing the field, they would find a place without anyone there and lure the boss over. Glory was a huge world. Even though there were a lot of players, it wasn't packed. In addition, not everyone was online for the entire day, so finding a place without anyone nearby wasn't difficult. As for how to quietly move the boss away, that depended on each guild. When Lord Grimm rushed to the scene, let alone moving the boss away, Conquering Cloud wasn't even done clearing away the field. Small club guilds had their own difficulties too. Even though they were also club guilds, weak teams didn't have much of a status in the players' eyes. The strength of weak teams were still far greater than normal in-game players, but that should be the case for pro teams anyways. Weak teams were only weak relative to the pro scene. However, to the players, if you kept on losing and losing, you were nothing but trash, even if you were far more skilled than them. If I look down on you, then I naturally won't acknowledge you as my superior. Even though I know that it might get troublesome if I don't leave, leaving just because you tell me to is too disgraceful. I'll look around for a bit and then leave. Is that not okay? In front of weak club guilds, even normal players were starting to talk about face. In the end, only a third of the nearby players actually left. Conquering Cloud's guild leader was depressed. Their team wasn't strong enough. It could even be felt in-game. They had just been bullied by Heavenly Justice, and now even normal players were looking down on them. The guild leader really wanted to order his troops to slaughter these bystanders and let them have a taste of their Conquering Cloud's might. Unfortunately, he knew he couldn't do it. It wasn't easy being a little team's guild leader. If it were just a few players, accidentally bringing them into the fight and killing them wouldn't be a problem, but 2/3 of them remained. If all of them were enveloped, it would be too obvious. Conquering Cloud's guild leader was frustrated. He didn't know what to do yet when he received a report. Not only were there many players still remaining, there was someone else coming over. FCK, who is it? Conquering Cloud's guild leader asked a meaningless question. This was a leveling area. There were plenty of players around anyways. Even though there was PK going on everywhere during this world war, it shouldn't be surprising for someone to wander in. But when he asked this question, he actually got a legitimate answer. It's Lord Grimm. The person who saw Lord Grimm reported. FCK. Conquering Cloud's guild leader sucked in a cold breath. Today's failure was all because of that guy. Conquering Cloud understood very well that if not for him, they wouldn't have lost so badly against Heavenly Justice. Heavenly Justice's coordination in that battle was imprinted deeply in his mind. It wasn't the sort of coordination an in-game guild should have. There was certainly an expert leading them, and he had seen Lord Grimm amongst them. How frustrating. So FC annoying. If he's coming, doesn't that mean that Heavenly Justice is coming too? Conquering Cloud's guild leader had his players expand their search area when he saw Lord Grimm strut over. The guild leader once again sucked in a cold breath towards Lord Grimm's equipment this time. His top-heavy bottom light style was extremely weird. What was this god doing? Then he saw Lord Grimm circle around them and actually asked a conquering Cloud player, "Why haven't you started attacking the boss?" Conquering Cloud's guild leader was so furious, his nose was crooked. Who asked for information in this way? It was way too disdainful. That player clearly wasn't prepared for the question. He didn't know how to reply and looked at his guild leader. Lord Grimm also turned around to look and saw the guild leader tag above the guild leader. He immediately walked over. "Are you the guild leader? Why haven't you started attacking the boss?" Ye Xiu actually straight up asked the guild leader this question. The King's Avatar chapter 672, Conquering Cloud's guild leader obviously knew who exactly he was facing. Usually, he would be excited about meeting a pro player in game, no matter who it was. But how could Conquering Cloud's guild leader feel excitement in his current situation? Speaking of which, it was truly quite pitiful for the fans of weak teams. Strong teams had gods, a beautiful win rate, and an incredible match record. Any of these were enough to make fans discuss their favorite teams enthusiastically. However, weak teams didn't have any of these. The reasons people would support weak teams clearly wasn't enamored by their glorious achievements. Due to this reason, the fans of weak teams were generally more loyal because there wasn't much they could support. They started off in a low position. Even a tiny improvement was enough to make them satisfied. These fans were a group of down-to-earth players, but that didn't mean they didn't like achievements either. They also hoped their team would have amazing players, exceptional characters, and an intimidating win record. Conquering Clouds once possessed such a quality. Sun Xiang. Conquering Clouds had unexpectedly uncovered such a talent. As soon as he came onto the stage, he attracted countless eyes. Sun Xiang had obtained the greatest glory one could achieve as an individual. In his very first year in the Alliance, he was already being mentioned alongside the other gods. That year, Conquering Cloud's win record was unprecedented, with regards to them, of course. But their happiness was short-lived. Many people expected great things from Sun Xiang and looked at him favorably, but none of it seemed to have anything to do with Conquering Clouds. The attention given to such a talent couldn't be considered as attention to their team. The fans of Conquering Clouds didn't want to admit it, but they could only do so. As Sun Xiang performed more and more spectacularly, they were filled with joy but also filled with worry and uneasiness. In his second season, when Sun Xiang continued to play with Conquering Clouds, the fans were as excited as if they had just won the championships. Yes, for a weak team, finding happiness in the team was very easy. Unfortunately, good things didn't last forever. During this season's winter, he transferred to another team. Team Excellent Era's captain, Ye Xiu, the greatest player in Glory's competitive history, retired. Following afterwards, Sun Xiang announced his transfer to Team Excellent Era to succeed Ye Xiu's position. Conquering Cloud's fans obviously felt bitter, but they still held their reasoning. As fans of Conquering Clouds, they had been prepared for such a move long ago. They sent their blessings to Sun Xiang, and even felt proud that someone from their team had been able to succeed a god like Ye Xiu. They didn't hold any grievances towards anyone, and simply continued to quietly support their team. Fighting for wild bosses. Truthfully speaking, Conquering Cloud didn't have an elite team responsible for wild bosses. This sort of competition was similar to their situation with a talent like Sun Xiang. From the very start, none of it seemed to be related to a weak team like Conquering Clouds, but they would never give up on such an opportunity. The playoffs were one such opportunity. The fans of the strong teams were busy waving flags and shouting battle cries, pouring out their emotions either due to being eliminated or for winning. This was a long-awaited event for fans of teams like Conquering Clouds. They didn't have the status to take part in it. They would only watch quietly from the sidelines when such opportunities suddenly appeared in front of them. The powerful guilds practically monopolized the wild bosses, leading their fans and contesting them. They hadn't relaxed in their wild boss hunting all year, up until now. It was hard to say how much of an improvement killing a few wild bosses could provide to a team, but if there was an opportunity, then why waste it? The small club guilds, who almost never participated in wild boss fights, had gathered their players together and spread across the world of glory, searching for wild bosses. Conquering Clouds was naturally one of these guilds, but they had unfortunately encountered Heavenly Justice at Darkness Palace. They knew that Heavenly Justice was about to have a team join the alliance. Their entrance came with quite some noise. The talk about Heavenly Justice even overshadowed their own. How could they accept that so easily? If an elite group from a strong team came, they would resign themselves to their inevitable loss, but they felt like they could still contest Heavenly Justice. However, they suffered a crushing defeat. Even an elite group from a powerful club guild wouldn't have beat them so badly. The reason was very obvious. It was because of the person heading over towards him. It was because of this guy's help that Conquering Clouds had suffered such huge losses in that fight. Conquering Clouds' guild leader shot-calling and tactics couldn't compete with a god's. And now this person was walking around so casually in front of him, asking such an arrogant question. Were they born to be looked down upon? Even though they were weak and the person looking down on them was glory's greatest of all time, Conquering Cloud's guild leader still felt like it was a blow to his pride. But perhaps he was already used to being looked down upon. Despite being angry, he didn't make any movements. Their feeble strength was a fact, and in any competitive platform the skilled were respected. You're still not fighting yet. Where are your people? In the end, Conquering Cloud's guild leader replied calmly to Ye Xiu's question. Oh, I'm here to investigate. My people are still far away. Ye Xiu said, so straightforward. Conquering Cloud's guild leader didn't know what to say. Under normal circumstances, let alone admitting that you were investigating, just from your guild tag alone, killing you off immediately didn't need any explanation. But facing this person, would they even be able to kill him if they tried? Conquering Cloud's guild leader couldn't help but ask himself this question. Even though he had 200 players on his side and his opponent was only one, he had heard that when this god entered the heavenly domain, the top guilds had allied together and chased after him. And the results? In the end, it was settled by leaving the matter unsettled. The other side was able to steadily climb his way up to level 70. As for why they left the matter unsettled, he didn't need to hear it from others to know. It was naturally because they had no other choice. If all of the top guilds couldn't do it, Conquering Cloud's guild leader doubted that he had any sort of chance of succeeding. The fans of small teams possess steadfast hearts. As the leader of these fans, Conquering Cloud's guild leader appeared calm. They were originally at the bottom. How could they go any lower, just like this wild boss? It wouldn't have originally gone to them. If they got it, they would profit. If they didn't lose out. There was no pressure on them, so when facing tough opponents like Changing Spring, Jiangyu, or Arasima, Conquering Cloud's guild leader would initially be depressed and become calm. Tell your people to come, Conquering Cloud's guild leader said. Oh, you're not going to move it away? Ye Xiu was surprised. It's not like it matters. We wouldn't be able to shrug you off even if we tried. No, Conquering Cloud's guild leader said. That's true. Ye Xiu confirmed. But do you think that if my people come, you'll have the ability to face them? Conquering Cloud's guild leader fell silent. Their tragic defeat at Darkness Palace was still fresh in their minds. Everyone was silent. No one said anything. They quietly listened to the conversation between their guild leader and their enemy. So you're saying we should quietly watch you guys? Conquering Cloud's guild leader said. Sure, I would never reject that offer, Ye Xiu said. Conquering Cloud's guild leader was depressed, but a small character was a small character. He knew when to give up. In the end, he sighed, it looks like that's our only choice. But I have a proposal. Ye Xiu suddenly spoke. What is it? Conquering Cloud's guild leader was ready to order his people to escape at any moment. Alliance, Ye Xiu said. What? Conquering Cloud's guild leader felt like he had heard incorrectly. Our current situation is only temporary. It'd be a miracle if we could keep this up for 2 weeks. Once this period ends, those guilds will certainly come back to compete for wild bosses. When that time comes, our strength will go back to being insufficient. No, Ye Xiu said. Even with you, Conquering Cloud's guild leader said. Why are you worried about me? You should be concerned with yourself. Ye Xiu said. Then what are you trying to say? Conquering Cloud's guild leader asked. We should cooperate together and break the wild boss monopoly held by those top guilds. Ye Xiu said. Conquering Cloud's guild leader stared blankly. I feel like you've never thought of doing this before, Ye Xiu said. I've thought of it before, but even if we allied together, I'm not sure if we'd be able to beat the top guilds, Conquering Cloud's guild leader said. But if you don't try, then you won't even have a chance at all, Ye Xiu said. In any case, it's not like you're doing anything else. Why not give it a try? Isn't it boring running dungeons every day? Look at how the heavenly domain is set up. It clearly encourages PK. As a club guild, shouldn't you be a model for others? Ye Xiu said. How are those even connected? Conquering Cloud's guild leader was depressed. At this moment, Ye Xiu received a message from Lulan Slash. Seeing that Lord Grimm had gone over but hadn't reported back in a long time, Lulan Slash felt uneasy. Relax. Discussion. Ye Xiu replied. Discussion. Lulan Slash asked, did I do something wrong? Why did he use that word? Discussing an alliance. Ye Xiu said, alliance. Lulan Slash was still confused. Alliance to kill wild bosses. Ye Xiu said, split between 3. Lulan Slash was somewhat astonished. Normally, with a god helping them, they had an overwhelming advantage. Why did they need extend an olive branch to Conquering Clouds? Not necessarily. It could be between 4, 5, 6. Ye Xiu said. What are you trying to get at? Lulan Slash asked. We should establish an alliance that can compete with the top guilds for the long term, not just using this opportunity to do a small bit of stealing. Ye Xiu said. Lulan Slash immediately understood. The top guilds were currently busy. Once this hype period was over, the fight for the bosses wouldn't remain the same as they did now. You were planning on doing this from the start? Lulan Slash asked. No, I just thought of it. Ye Xiu said. The King's Avatar Chapter 673, I just thought of it. Lulan Slash muttered to himself. He didn't need Ye Xiu to explain it to him to know that this would be a long-term solution. But even so, he wasn't very happy with Ye Xiu making such a decision on his behalf. This was completely different from when he was acting like a dog following him around everywhere. That could be considered just a joke, but Ye Xiu directly deciding something for him was a completely different matter. Lulan Slash had to express his complaints. Why didn't you tell me about this before making such a decision? Yes, he just wanted to be informed of it beforehand. Lulan Slash liked this plan. He wasn't against it, but he needed to be the one to make the decision. Even Ocean Ahead, Homeward Bound, Thousand Falling Leaves, or Night Tide would be fine too. Ye Xiu shouldn't be allowed to help Heavenly Justice make such an important decision. This time, Lulan Slash felt that Ye Xiu had gone too far. Oh, aren't I doing that right now? What do you think of it? Ye Xiu replied. Lulan Slash choked. This was how the matter would be resolved. Lulan Slash wasn't satisfied. He felt like Ye Xiu should be aware of his stance. What if I don't want to? Lulan Slash replied. He was ready to let Ye Xiu know. Didn't you already decide? Did you really think that I would definitely accept your plan? You were right in the fact that I have no objections, but what if I don't agree to it? What are you going to do? Oh, you're not going to participate. Ye Xiu replied and even typed out an astonished emoji. You must be surprised. Ha ha. Now you know that you shouldn't take everything for granted. Know that you can't make decisions on behalf of Heavenly Justice. Lulen Slash was still enjoying himself when Ye Xiu suddenly messaged, "If you're not going to participate, how are you going to get any bosses in the future?" "Ha ha, maybe I have a different way," Lulen Slash replied. Okay, Ye Xiu replied, "so you had backup plans. I hadn't thought of that. Looks like we'll be adversaries in the future. Good luck." Wait. Lulen Slash was dumbfounded. Something wasn't right. Before he could even react, the guild system notified him that Lord Grim, Soft Mist, and Steamed Bun Invasion had all left the guild. Afterwards, Tang Ru, Steamed Bun, and Chen Gu said their farewells and prepared to leave. Hey, where are you guys going?" Lulen Slash called out to them when he suddenly understood. "It's a misunderstanding, Lulen Slash cried. The three characters stopped and looked at him. Their characters' expressions were cold and indifferent. In reality, they were puzzled. What had happened? What misunderstanding? Lulen Slash finally realized what had happened. Ye Xiu hadn't made any decisions on his behalf. He was making his own decision. Lulen Slash had forgotten why Ye Xiu had even been in his guild to begin with. It was just for them to temporarily take advantage of their guild's extra stat points. Ye Xiu wasn't there to serve his guild. Their statuses were equal. Ye Xiu was working alone. He just hadn't created his guild yet, so he was staying with Heavenly Justice until he did so. So it really had been a misunderstanding, but this misunderstanding wasn't easy to explain. Lulen Slash had brought this upon himself. When he saw them leave his guild, Lulen Slash finally realized. In that alliance plan, his Heavenly Justice had been crossed out as someone who wouldn't be joining. FCK. How could I not take part in this? If Ye Xiu really did what he said he would do, the small club guilds would ally together. The top club guilds would still be as powerful as ever. How could his Heavenly Justice compete with them both alone? Lulen Slash didn't want to be the unique one. Not at all. As he shouted at them to stop, he hastily messaged Ye Xiu to explain in a shameless manner. "You're too decisive. I never said I wasn't going to participate. I was just thinking over it." "Think? What's there to think about?" Ye Xiu replied. "Yeah, there's no need to think about it, but I accidentally spilled some water on my keyboard, so I was in a bit of a fluster. I thought too much for a second there. I just decided that I had to participate, right? Isn't that obvious?" Lulen Slash regretted how the other side could see his impatience. "Oh, then come over here. We haven't noticed any other guilds coming, so us three will kill it together." Ye Xiu replied. 3. Lulen Slash saw this number. As expected. Ye Xiu hadn't considered himself a part of Heavenly Justice. They were separate entities. Lulen Slash had assumed it on his own and regarded Ye Xiu as laboring for him. Lulen Slash hastily led his team over to the boss, while inviting Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion back to the guild. However, the invites were denied. When he looked again, he remembered that those who left a guild couldn't join another one for 5 days. Lulen Slash had forgotten about it in his anxiousness. Sigh. Lulen Slash sighed. He originally had a close relationship with Ye Xiu, but with just one blunder he had it. They originally had Heavenly Justice next to their names, giving Conquering Clouds and any other guilds a warning. And now, Ye Xiu wouldn't directly join Conquering Cloud, right? Lulen Slash was somewhat fidgety. He forgot about the notification he got. Those who left the guild wouldn't be able to join another guild for 5 days. When Heavenly Justice arrived, Ye Xiu and Conquering Cloud's guild leader had already finished their discussion. With their alliance in place, the bit of enmity between them went away. The two were happily chatting together. Quite a few Conquering Cloud players had come over too. Who was this? God, Ye Xiu. To be able to meet him in-game was definitely something to be excited about. When Lulen Slash came over and saw Conquering Cloud's guild leader chatting away with Ye Xiu, he felt sad and depressed. It's all my own fault. Why did I have to say all that when I didn't even understand the situation? God, Lulen Slash went over and gave an awkward greeting. You're here. Let's start then. We'll split the rewards evenly 3 ways. Will that be an issue? Ye Xiu said. It seems like Ye Xiu would be considering himself as an equal entity, but his abilities didn't need to be discussed. How could heavenly justice or conquering clouds not know of his capabilities in leading a group? So even though the other side had fewer people, none of them objected to him taking an equal share. Even though he had fewer people, all of them were experts. You guys have probably never fought against this boss before, right? Ye Xiu asked the two guild leaders. Yeah. Conquering Cloud's guild leader and Lulan Slash confirmed it. Then I'll be responsible for leading this operation, Ye Xiu said. Neither of them objected, but Lulan Slash also knew that Ye Xiu had never fought against this boss before either, but starting something new was never easy. The two guilds working together would have around 400 to 500 players in this small area. It was unusually noisy. The two sides had fought against each other just a short while ago at Darkness Palace. All of a sudden, they would now be cooperating with each other. This sudden change in relationship was a familiar one for the big club guilds, but for these guild players who rarely competed, it took some time for them to get used to. Furthermore, this was for a wild boss. 4 full groups weren't necessary. They might accidentally injure one another too, which would prove to be troublesome. As a result, the two guilds chose their strongest members and had them form a group. Everyone else dispersed and were in charge of being on the lookout. Without any other guilds around, didn't that mean they would be doing nothing? Then shall we start? Ye Xiu looked around. Lulan Slash and Conquering Cloud's guild leader would obviously be a part of the main group. Let's start. Team 1, Team 2. Ye Xiu started giving instructions. Sometimes he would speak. Other times he would type. In any case, the group chat would be very clean during these times, so typing out the instructions wouldn't be difficult to see. The front lines would consist of Ye Xiu's Lord Grim, Soft Mist, and Lulan Slash's team. Their skill level surpassed top normal players. As for the other members of the group, they would be dealing damage whenever they were given the opportunity to do so. From time to time, they would need to make adjustments according to the instructions given. Chen Guo's Chasing Haze was amongst these players. When she looked around left and right, there were numerous Heavenly Justice and Conquering Cloud players surrounding her. The only happy player was herself. How lonely. Chen Guo was depressed. They needed to hurry and establish their guild. They should at least have some number between 10 and 20 people here. With Ye Xiu leading and several experts helping, Forest Guardian Vich wasn't an easy task, but it still went smoothly. From an overall perspective, even though they weren't a big club guild, they didn't lack elite teams. Along with a god like Ye Xiu, the elite teams from the guilds were more than enough. The wild boss was steadily eaten up. Ye Xiu's precise decision-making helped a lot. Lulan Slash and the others let out a sigh of relief. With his leading, it really had been quite easy to beat this wild boss. As long as no outsider messed things up, the boss wouldn't give them any trouble. But their fear came. Conquering Cloud's guild leader received a message that Guild Radiant was coming. Guild Radiant belonged to Club Radiant. Team Radiant placed 17th in the regular season. They were clearly a bottom-tier team, but they wanted to take advantage of this situation to snag a few wild bosses as well. Are they close? Ye Xiu asked, when he saw the message from Conquering Cloud's guild leader. They should arrive before we finish killing the boss. Conquering Cloud's guild leader said. Then we should let them come. With our current situation, it'll be quite convenient to talk about things once they arrive. Ye Xiu said the King's Avatar Chapter 674, Radiant wasn't actually certain that a boss had spawned. They simply had a similar line of thinking, and stationed their players all throughout the world to be on the lookout. In the end, players from Radiant discovered unusual movements from Conquering Clouds at the World Tree and immediately reported back. When Radiant heard the news, they were quite excited. If the other side had already grouped up, it meant they were about to start attacking the boss. If they hurried over and snuck up on them, maybe they would be able to steal the boss. Radiant formed two groups of players and rushed towards the World Tree. The Radiant players, who had discovered the unusual movements, saw conquering clouds shoo them away, confirming their suspicions. A wild boss had definitely spawned here. Force your way past them. Hearing that their players were being cleared from the field, Radiant's guild leader ordered the two groups of players under him to prepare to sweep Conquering Cloud in one go. But when they arrived at the location, they weren't met with any resistance. Conquering Cloud seemed to be intentionally avoiding them, allowing Radiant to reach the boss's location without any pressure. What's going on? Radiant's guild leader was puzzled. The opposing side wasn't stopping him from reaching the boss. Were they still fighting for the boss? This didn't make any sense. Wait. Radiant's guild leader felt like there must have been a trap set somewhere. He felt a bit afraid to continue venturing deeper and hastily called his troops to halt. Everyone, wait here for now. I'll go take a look ahead with a few others. Radiant's guild leader positioned himself as a scout and picked out a few players to go with him. They formed a small team and ventured deeper to investigate. Not long afterwards, they quickly saw a huge commotion up ahead. A whole bunch of players seemed to be scattered around, but they were actually organized, aiming for the same target as if they were fighting the boss. Why was it as if? Because Radiant Scouts saw that some of these players had Conquering Cloud Guild tags, while others had Heavenly Justice Guild tags. What sort of situation is this? Radiant Scouts were puzzled. In an ideal world, two guilds would be fighting together alongside one another. However, something like that had never happened before. Wild bosses were such valuable resources. It was difficult for guilds like them to even have an opportunity to kill one, yet they were actually cooperating with one another and giving half of their troops to the other side. How could things be so perfect? It's a trap. There was definitely a trap hidden somewhere. Radiant's guild leader thought, but he didn't know if this trap was for Radiant, or if those two guilds were plotting something against each other. If it was the latter, then it would be easy pickings for Radiant. On the other hand, if it was a trap for Radiant, what was the trap? Have them believe it would be easy pickings. Radiant's guild leader was completely dumbfounded. There were no hints of them setting up any sort of net. Guild leader, what do we do? Someone next to him asked. Something feels fishy. Radiant's guild leader hesitated. He looked around left and right, but no one seemed to notice them. Since there were only a few of them, by sticking close together, they easily avoided the sight of any nearby players. Can you see the boss? Radiant's guild leader stuck out his head, hoping to see something abnormal amongst the crowd of players. They should be attacking the boss, right? Why else would they be causing such a commotion? One person said. But it's too peaceful. That's not logical at all. Radiant's guild leader didn't understand at all. No matter how much he couldn't understand, they still had a goal in mind. The boss's health wasn't going to wait for them. They also didn't know when this crowd of players started attacking the boss. What if the boss was killed by the time they got there? Radiant's guild leader sent a message back, telling everyone to hurry over while they continued to observe the two guilds. After receiving the message, Radiant's players immediately set out. The two guilds obviously noticed the movements of such a large group of players. Conquering Cloud's guild leader and Lulan Slash continuously received updates. It was very obvious what the other side wanted. Perhaps it would be best to defend against them, so the two guilds organized their leftover troops to gather together. When Radiant arrived, the players from the two guilds that had been spread out earlier converged. Radiant's guild leader saw this scene. Holy SHT, they have so many people. It seemed like these two guilds really were partners. Why were they so against Radiant? Were these two guilds getting married? The two sides faced each other, but because their guild leaders hadn't given them any orders, neither side moved. They were all elite teams and were well disciplined. If their guild leader didn't tell them to do anything, they wouldn't provoke the other side, so the situation a stalemate. Ahem. Radiant's guild leader felt like he should say something. He went to the front of his troops. "What are you guys doing? We're killing the boss. What else would we be doing?" Someone answered back as if it were obvious. Radiant's guild leader had a title next to his name, indicating that he was the guild leader. The other side wasn't a part of Radiant, though, so they didn't care. Killing the boss. Radiant's guild leader really wanted to know why they weren't fighting each other, but how could he ask that? In the end, he said, "Really? How's it going?" "We're almost done," the other side replied. "What are you trying to do? Do you plan on stopping us?" Conquering Cloud's players shouted. Radiant's guild leader looked at them with disdain. In his heart, he was thinking about how stupid these people were. "If we're not here to stop you, do you think we're here to watch?" These people must have never killed a wild boss before. Radiant's guild leader thought because their guild had gotten a few wild bosses before. Even though they were powerless against the large guilds, Radiant had never given up on pursuing wild bosses. The heavenly domain was so vast. Even if the big guilds spread their net wide, there would always be a few fish that slipped through. Radiant relied on this method to snatch a few wild bosses. However, because of their goal, the number of times that they had been wiped by the big guilds was more than the number of wild boss kills they had managed to secure under their belts. Sometimes, they would arrive first and start attacking the boss, but the big guilds ended up catching them and wiped them out along with the boss. Even so, Radiant's guild leader felt like they were still on the competitive side. They were one grade higher than those guilds who didn't even dare to compete for wild bosses. In his eyes, conquering clouds was naturally a lower grade than them. As for heavenly justice, they didn't have anything besides money. Although he believed that Radiant had more experience than those two guilds, seeing how those two guilds were allied with each other, Radiant's guild leader didn't dare to fight them 1 versus 2. He blamed the unclear reports from the players that had informed him. If he knew there were 2 guilds, he would have brought more people. Radiant's guild leader was wondering what he should do right now. Suddenly, he heard cheers of celebration and he knew that it wasn't good. Sure enough, the wild boss had been killed and the 2 guilds were cheering as a result. FCK. These 2 guilds actually committed adultery. Radiant's guild leader saw that the boss had fallen, yet the 2 other guilds never attacked each other once. In the end, they even cheered together. It really made him speechless. These people were truly amateurs. Instead of fighting over the wild boss, they actually allied together. Radiant's guild leader thought resentfully. He was already planning on leaving when he saw the players from the 2 guilds disperse. Conquering Cloud's guild leader Ye Xiu and Heavenly Justice's guild leader Lulan Slash were walking over. Between these two was a weird-looking top-heavy guy who instantly made Radiant's guild leader. No, the entire guild of Radiant pay attention. When this guy got closer and they could finally see his id, Radiant's guild leader felt his head go dizzy. FCK, isn't he that guy? Radiant's guild leader stood dumbly there, forgetting to tell his guild to leave. These 3 walked up to him. Conquering Cloud's guild leader Ye Xiu was familiar with him, so he introduced him to the other 2. "This is Radiant's guild leader Whitestream. I don't know if you 2 know of him." "It's an honor to meet you," Lulan Slash said. This wasn't him being polite. Even though Radiant was a bottom-tier team in the Alliance, a pro team was still a pro team. Their guild was still quite powerful. Lulan Slash had conjured a storm and his popularity appeared to be soaring. However, his foundation still couldn't compare to these club guilds. They had real and loyal fans. Their team was doing so poorly, yet they still didn't leave their team. If they weren't loyal fans, what were they? Mem. Ye Xiu nodded twice. He was being sincere. Saying it was an honor to meet him would be a lie. Even though Radiant's guild leader could be considered a top figure in the game, his status wouldn't even reach Ye Xiu's ears. Ye Xiu was currently wondering who was in Team Radiant. Was there anyone noteworthy? "This is Heavenly Justice's guild leader Lulan Slash. This is he. I don't need to introduce him, do I? Yue Zikin introduced them to White Stream. Ha, that's right. White Stream didn't know what to say. He was staring at Lord Grimm. He wasn't prepared at all to meet this god. His brain was currently short-circuiting. Right, what? What do you want to say? Yue Ziking said. His relationship with White Stream wasn't bad. Of course, his personal relationship wouldn't get in the way of guild matters like competing for bosses. It's like this. Ye Xiu said, you saw us killing the boss together, right? Yeah, White Stream said. It went smoothly, no, Ye Xiu said. White Stream thought it went smoothly because I hesitated too much. Had I acted, it wouldn't have gone so smoothly. We're cooperating together to kill bosses. How about it? Would you like to join us? If you do, once this period is over, we might not necessarily lose out to Tyranny, Tiny Herb, or Blue Rain. Ye Xiu said. How aggressive, White Stream thought. God Ye Xiu had directly called out Tyranny, Tiny Herb, and Blue Rain. These were team names. If it were me, I'd be saying Tyrannical Ambition, Herb Garden, and Blue Brook Guild. Tusk, there's such a huge difference between us. White Stream's mind wasn't there. His focus was all over the place. The King's Avatar chapter 675, speaking of which, Ye Xiu was more used to calling these guilds by their team's name. For White Stream to notice such details, he could be considered quite meticulous. However, he was noticing things he shouldn't be noticing, and noticing things he shouldn't be noticing. It was only after he thought about these things for a while did he suddenly realize the other side's intentions. Cooperate. White Stream quickly calculated. He knew that this method would work against the big guilds, but there was one issue. Would such an alliance be stable enough for something as important as a wild boss? This was the equipment and the materials that dropped from the boss just now. If you joined us, we'll distribute these evenly between the 4 of us instead of 3. Lulan said, while writing out a list of items and sent it to the other party. The list sent to him was naturally the rewards dropped by the wild boss. Right when the list was sent to him, Lulan dumped out all of the drops onto the floor. DMN. White Stream had the urge to rush forward at this moment. Why did everyone want wild bosses? Because of its drops. Now someone just threw them onto the ground. He really wanted to come forward and take them, but he wasn't brazen enough to do so. These items were dropped by the player, not the boss, so the system wouldn't protect them. In the end, he didn't take any action and could only swallow down his saliva. If they dared to throw these items at his feet, it meant that they felt safe to do so. Let alone God Ye Xiu standing there. In that instant, White Stream felt countless cold gazes shoot towards him. Of course, this was only figurative because he himself was outside of the game. However, this feeling told him, don't make any rash movements, we're prepared. Afterwards, White Stream saw those 3 characters crouch around the pile of items, which even the powerful guilds would envy, and start distributing the items among themselves. The 3 chatted with each other with smiles and took the items they needed. Yes, White Stream wasn't seeing things. They were distributing the items among themselves. Wild bosses were so rare and difficult to kill. How could there be just a few items? Forest Guardian Vich had dropped a total of 19 items, 2 of which were orange equipment and the rest materials. In the eyes of the players, orange equipment dropped from a wild boss was considered the best equipment that they could obtain. In glory, only silver equipment created by pro teams could surpass orange equipment. However, not even pros necessarily had all silver equipment. Those who didn't have silver equipment would have to rely on orange equipment dropped by wild bosses. There were no purple equipment in the pro scene. In the pro scene, purple equipment was poor enough to make players angry, even if the majority of players in the game didn't even have purple equipment. Even though orange equipment was widely used in the pro scene, silver equipment were still better. Orange equipment was simply temporary placeholders. The pro scene had only recently started developing. After another 8 of 10 years, there might not be any orange equipment at all. All that being said, the value of an orange equipment dropped from a wild boss wasn't any lower than a wild boss material, because orange equipment could be used as research materials for equipment development. With the equipment editor, they could figure out how this equipment had those stats. After obtaining this information, was it possible to elevate the stats to another stage? If the stats of this level of orange equipment were to be upgraded, wouldn't a silver equipment be born? Even though this sort of silver equipment couldn't be compared to a custom-made silver equipment, for clubs without a lot of resources, this was a common method used to improve their strength. This kind of research wasn't easy as there were times when the equipment couldn't be restored during the research. Due to this, there was a need to have multiple of the same equipment to compensate for these mistakes. Of the two pieces of equipment that had dropped just now, Ye Xiu took one of them away, probably for research. Ye Xiu took the other, after seeing that Lulan wasn't interested in it. For Ye Xiu and his team, this piece of equipment could help them improve their strength. Next, the materials were distributed after a brief discussion. White Stream watched them from the sidelines. He felt that none of them had lost out. 19 items. Even after being distributed amongst 3 people, each would still receive quite a number of items. White Stream agreed with the way they distributed the drops. Afterwards, the 3 characters stood up again and gazed at him. White Stream knew the 3 of them intentionally distributed the items in front of him, showing him that they would distribute the items fair and square. If we divide these items between 4, Ye Xiu spoke, marking the start of a new conversation. If we divide them by 4, the items would be easier to distribute. Ye Xiu said, I agree. How about you take out that violet fragment and oak vine, God Ye Xiu takes out the world tree fragment, and I take out a red berry and a sober stone. These 5 should be enough for White Stream, Lulan suggested. Wait a minute, why should I give away a violet fragment? I can also give a sober stone. Ye Xiu said. What? Are you saying that your red berry is the same value as my oak vine? Lulan asked. Does it matter whether the item given is of same value or not? It's fin, as long all 4 of us get similar values. Ye Xiu replied, the items you're giving up aren't fair. Also, your remaining items on your side are worth more than what we have. Lulan said, now we're dividing by 4, so a bit of a difference is fine. Giving your violet fragment and oak vine to White Stream is the correct way, Lulan said. If I'm giving a violet fragment to White Stream, then you have to give a water fire crystal. Ye Xiu said. Water fire crystal? You be starred, are you doing this on purpose? Do you think I don't know the value of water fire crystal? Lulan angrily refuted back. All right. Both of you, stop arguing. You guys already arguing like this for such a small matter. Why don't you guys argue again after the next boss? Ye Xiu finally stepped in to resolve the situation. Meanwhile, White Stream almost drooled out from listening at them. This guy was shouting to give him this while the other was demanding to give him that. It caused him to almost take it as real. He even almost went to trade with them. Violet fragment, oak vine, world tree fragment, red berry, and water fire crystal. White Stream craved for all of them. He strongly wished that these guys would give all of it to him. But then when Ye Xiu stepped in, he realized that it was only a conjecture and not for real. DMN, they weren't actually giving all of those to him. He almost tricked himself. Thinking about it again, it felt like they purposely fighting in front of him. It was the same as when they were laying out all of the items on the ground. Were they trying to entice him to join them? Even though he knew what they were trying to do, he was really looking forward to it. How about he try following these guys? White Stream still wasn't confident. Would these people distribute the dropped items fair and square and not manipulate them to their own advantage? If these people teamed up with each other, then his guild would easily kicked aside by them any time. Just as White Stream was still hesitating about it, Ye Xiu suddenly received a message. Oh, another boss spawned. Really? Where? Our side still hasn't received any news. Lulan shouted out. Yue Zikin didn't immediately reply. Instead he asked White Stream, "Do you want to come with us?" Another wild boss. White Stream's side also hadn't received any news. The heavenly domain was too large and wild bosses randomly spawned. If it was just their guild, it wouldn't be strange to miss a boss. Even with all the guilds working together, bosses sometimes wouldn't be discovered by any of them. If they didn't have any information on a boss, it was possible that they wouldn't know if there was a wild boss fight even happening. Rather than a non-existent chance, why not try working with them? He could also observe their attitudes towards him too. Okay, I'll go too. After thinking about it for a while, White Stream agreed to follow them. Yue Zikin announced that the newly spawned boss was the swordsman protector Kyu of Sighing Ravine. Another level 70 boss. Lulan was excited. Today, they had killed 3 level 70 wild bosses. Even though the number of items distributed reduced each time, it was still better compared to before, where they couldn't even find one. Is there a need to be surprised about this? White Stream looked down on them when he saw that other guild leader was so excited just from hearing the name of the wild boss. He was showing off his superiority to the other guilds for having killed a wild boss before. Though he acted this way, he was actually quite excited too. "Shall we go?" Lulan didn't refute back. Speaking of which, he immediately felt embarrassed after that. The other guild leaders didn't act like him when they heard the name of the wild boss, and yet he acts like such a peasant. How unsightly. He was going to enter the league as a pro player next season, yet he was still acting like this. So embarrassing. He should learn more from God Ye Xiu's calm demeanor. "Let's go." They called out to their troops and set out. 3 guild leaders, each leading 2 groups of players. It was very noisy. On the other hand, Ye Xiu's team was more solemn. With only 4 people in their team, they wouldn't even be able to be spotted if they were thrown in amongst the crowd of players. In addition, their equipment might be remarkable in normal teams, but compared to these elite groups, theirs was too mundane. Let alone orange equipment. They didn't even have any equipment from 100-player raid dungeons. How could they compare with the elites of these club guilds? Conquering Clouds and Radiant didn't do well in the competition for wild bosses, but that was because they were up against strong opponents. However, for 100-player raid dungeons, their teams could still challenge those the King's Avatar Chapter 676 Ye Xiu's group, as well as the players from the 3 allied guilds, returned to the nearest city and teleported as near as they could to the Sighing Ravine. They were fairly spread out as they moved. After all, the situation still wasn't very stable. If their movements caught the attention of the club guilds, they might get dragged into the war, so the 3 guilds tacitly kept a low profile while traveling. Conquering Clouds wasn't the only guild to notice Sword Master Kyu. Compared to Ye Xiu and the others, who had to travel through several locations to reach the boss, this guild grouped together quickly. After clearing the surrounding area, they prepared to move the boss away. Yue Zikin immediately received reports that his players were being shooed away. This other guild was Parade. Team Parade had placed 16th this regular season, along with Team Radiant and Team Conquering Clouds, who placed 15th and 17th in the regular season. These 3 teams were just as bad as each other. With similar placings, they were in a similar situation in the game. Usually, Parade lived the life of poaching a few wild bosses. Seeing how the big guilds were all fighting one another, why wouldn't they take advantage of this opportunity and reap some rewards? They were also busy wandering around the world, looking for bosses. No one knew exactly when this Sword Master Kyu had spawned. In any case, Parade had been the first to arrive. Sighing Ravine had complicated terrain, making it easy to hide a boss. After clearing away any surrounding players, Parade began moving the boss away to somewhere without any enemy eyes. This kind of remote leveling area hadn't become a battlefield for the ongoing World War. For this sort of chaotic killing without any real purpose, the fires of war would spread and then shrink because, when a player died, that player would have to revive elsewhere, so the battles would slowly concentrate near the cities and then towards the revival points. Sighing Ravine was already a remote area away from the populated places. This area wasn't crowded, but it wasn't completely empty either, although it was more on the unfrequented side. Even more so at the time of night like now. Parade pulled the boss along and soon found a suitable location. Afterwards, they had a few scouts spread out and pay attention to any suspicious players nearing their location. Truthfully, there was no such thing as an unsuspicious player. In this type of situation, if you were a player in the general vicinity, you were considered suspicious. It didn't matter if you were in a guild or not. You would be closely watched by Parade. However, since they weren't clearing the area, Parade would only pay attention to them. They wouldn't take the initiative to give them a warning. If they did that, wouldn't that be the same as saying 300 silver taels were hidden here? That would just be telling the world that they were killing a wild boss at this location. The scouts who spread around the map wouldn't have Parade's guild tag displayed next to their names. Ye Xiu and the others were still quite far and their intel was poor. After conquering Cloud's players were cleared out of the area, they couldn't stay there and give any updates. When the main troops arrived, they could only vaguely which direction Parade took off. "We have to hurry," Ye Xiu looked at the time. He was worried that by the time they found the boss would already be dead. Spread out to save some time. The three guild leaders didn't hesitate. They led their teams towards the general direction. Whenever a split road appeared, they would immediately split their troops. The three guilds had 6 groups for a total of 60 teams or 600 players, which spread out and searched the area. Their initial direction was accurate, so with this many players searching, along with some experienced judgment, a team from Heavenly Justice discovered a few of Parade's movements. When Heavenly Justice made their discovery, Parade noticed them too. It didn't matter if this team didn't have a guild tag. If you're a player, you're suspicious. Seeing that this team was getting closer to the boss, Parade sent some people to stop them. Heavenly Justice's team was killed, but although they didn't see the boss himself, being attacked was also an indicator. The team reported back and the 3 guilds all headed towards this location. After Parade wiped out this team, they didn't immediately pull the boss elsewhere. After all, this team was simply killed because they were suspicious. They didn't actually know that this team was searching for the boss. Killing people for no reason wasn't good, especially for a club guild. As a result, the players sent to wipe out these suspicious players wouldn't be someone well known in Parade or have a guild tag on their name. When was it a good time to use open accounts? Now, of course. If these suspicious players were from a guild, then both sides were well aware of the reason. If these suspicious players were normal players, Parade couldn't let these players speak badly about them. Parade continued to fight the boss, while paying close attention to whether there would be any aftereffects from killing this team. Sure enough, many more players were starting towards their location. Parade immediately knew that they hadn't killed random passers-by, but players actively searching for the boss. Then should they continue fighting or should they hide? Parade's guild leader was called Martial Awareness. After thinking about it, he decided to stay and fight. They could use the terrain to their advantage and form a defensive formation around the location. As long as they could stall for long enough, they would have enough time to kill the boss. Martial Awareness quickly gave the order. He immediately commanded the sub-guild leader to lead a portion of their troops to set up a defensive wall, while he led the team in killing the boss. They weren't very familiar with killing this wild boss, but players from club guilds still had good equipment and skills. From an overall perspective, they were still strong, unlike Heavenly Justice, whose only top experts were Lulan/Slash's team, while everyone else was just average. Facing a wild boss, which required many players to defeat, Heavenly Justice couldn't compare to any of the club guilds in this sense. Martial Awareness's assistant led a group of players and started making arrangements. Their scouts had returned for more support. Not long afterwards, the sounds of jumbled footsteps gradually echoed throughout Sighing Ravine. They started getting closer and closer. When this parade's sub-guild leader heard the sound getting louder and louder, his expression started to change. It seemed like there were a lot of people coming. Of course, there were a lot. The three allied guilds had a total of 600 players. They outnumbered Parade by nearly 3-1, and the group led by Parade's sub-guild leader by 6-1. But more important was the person leading this huge 600-player army. Ye Xiu, known as the Glory Encyclopedia and a god, how could he not be well versed in tactics? As their troops advanced, the ravine was still as quiet as ever. Even the allied guild leaders knew something was going on. How could Ye Xiu not realize that there must be some sort of trap in that entrance up ahead? But who cares if there was an ambush? Ye Xiu's Lord Grim turned back and looked behind him. The players from the three allied guilds had nearly all gathered together. For the ravine to be so peaceful, Parade must be the only guild there. With such an overwhelming numbers advantage, any sort of ambush was worthless. Charge! Ye Xiu didn't even try and arrange any formations. He just said one word. If they only relied on their sea of people to charge through, they would certainly be slowed by the terrain. But the ones leading the charge were daggers that would pierce through the enemy defense. Lord Grim, Soft Mist, Steamed Bun Invasion. Lulan/Slash's 5-player team. Yue Zikin and Whitestream couldn't be considered as weak either. They were experts who were responsible for leading their entire guild. A total of 18 players led the charge and made the first turn around the corner. Attack! Parade's sub-guild leader wasn't polite and gave the order as soon as he saw them. The prepared attacks flew out, but the opposing seemed to be closing in on them faster than their skills could be released. In the blink of an eye, all sorts of skills fell, not just from Parade but also from the allied sides. The dagger pierced into the heart and continued through it. 18 elites. The 10 from Conquering Clouds and Radiant were somewhat weaker, but Ye Xiu, Tang Ru, Steamed Bun and Lulan/Slash's team far surpassed the skill of a normal player. In an instant, they trampled through the enemy ranks. Parade's sub-guild leader could tell that the other side had a lot of people and was already uneasy, but how could he have known that they would immediately get rushed through in one go? He even went up himself to defend, but a brick landed on him. A spear launched him into the air, along with a bunch of other skills. FCK. How did he turn into a ghost? He could only blame his sub-guild leader tag being so eye-catching. It was always best to kill the leader first if there was an opportunity to. It was like this in war, on the streets, and in the game. The leader was killed not long after the battle began. It didn't need to be said that Parade's defense fell into shambles. They couldn't even defend against these 18 elites when the rest of the troops arrived. That sea of people completely devoured them. FCK. Martial Awareness received his sub-guild leader's message. He was still busy killing the boss. He just looked at it but didn't have time to reply. When suddenly the players next to him clearly made a mistake, he immediately shouted, "What are you doing? Focus. Where are you looking?" "Guild leader, look behind us." Someone beside him stuttered. Martial Awareness turned around to look. FCK, what the hell was this? Where'd everyone go? Why are there so many people? Who are these guys? Bringing so many people for a boss, have some integrity. The sea of people had arrived in front of Martial Awareness's group. Trying to bring the boss away now was impossible. They lost focus out of terror and Sword Master Ku killed 4 of them in one slash. At this point, the guild tags on the players bared their fangs. Martial awareness immediately realized that it wasn't just one guild but 3 guilds. What's going on? Were they allying together to swallow them up? At this moment, a top-heavy, weird-looking guy stood out in front of everyone. Martial awareness glanced at him and was furious. FCK, what's this? You're sending this guy out to make fun of me. But soon afterwards he saw the id on this weird guy's head. Lord Grimm. Martial awareness's heart fell to his feet. He knew very well who this person was. At this moment Lord Grimm calmly spoke. Guild leader, let's put the boss aside and have a chat. The King's Avatar chapter 677. Let's put the boss aside. Even if Parade wanted to stop, the boss had to agree too. Bosses couldn't speak or communicate though. Under the hungry gazes of the 3 allied guilds, Parade continued to defend against the boss as their sweat drenched their backs. Martial awareness knew that they wouldn't be able to win this time. Their group had the terrain advantage, yet they were still instantly crushed by their opponents. Such a powerful force wasn't something that martial awareness could contend against, especially when a god was the one leading the enemy's forces. What exactly was going on? What do you want? Martial awareness spoke hoarsely. In this type of situation, he already had intentions of shrinking back, but as a guild leader, his pride couldn't bear it. The other side was too cruel and direct, not leaving him any room to move. After crushing my forces, he wants me to sit down and chat. What the FCK is there to talk about? We'll have to listen to anything you say anyway. Let's be allies, we'll split the boss drops equally. Ye Xiu said. HM. Martial awareness felt like he had heard incorrectly. What type of situation was this? They could simply step over Parade's corpse and take the boss. Why was he talking about being allies and splitting the boss? Martial awareness wondered, is this some sort of trick? But did the other side even need to play any tricks in a situation like this? Clearly not. What's more, the 3 guilds standing next to each other were already a bit weird. Along with a god like Ye Xiu leading them, martial awareness suddenly realized that it might not actually be a joke. Not just now, but later. We'll kill them together and split the loot. Ye Xiu followed with the main point. Oh, martial awareness understood that this was the key point. Was this going to be a long-term alliance? That doesn't sound too bad. Hurry up and decide, the boss is about to die. If you don't agree, we'll have to steal it, Ye Xiu said. So direct and domineering. Ye Xiu displayed such an attitude after displaying their overwhelming strength. Did martial awareness have any choice? None. Even if he wasn't certain, he should still agree for now and see what the other side would do first. Okay, I agree, martial awareness quickly replied. Then this boss will be split between us 5, Ye Xiu said. 5. Martial awareness repeated this number and realized that Ye Xiu counted as his own separate entity. Yes, do you need help killing this boss? Ye Xiu asked. No need, more people will only make it messier, martial awareness said. Even though the sudden attack had previously killed several of their members, they quickly regained their foothold. Relying on their current troops, killing Sword Master Ku wouldn't be too difficult. However, if more groups joined, they would need to worry about not accidentally injuring one another. More than one group fighting only worked when they were all from a single guild with good tacit coordination. A bunch of guilds swarming around would make things much more difficult. Okay, then we'll watch, Ye Xiu said. Sure enough, the 3 guilds didn't go up and help. They didn't surround them and stop them from escaping either. They really did just stand there, quietly watching from the sidelines. They're really confident, martial awareness thought. They were letting him kill the boss. When the boss was killed, he could quickly pick up all the loot. Even if he died, how many would drop? He wouldn't lose out either way. This reasoning is very simple, but the other side was still allowing it to happen. What are they relying on? Martial awareness felt somewhat uneasy. With the boss almost dead, he didn't need to lead his guild anymore. They could do it on their own. After martial awareness pondered for a bit, he immediately understood. The other side was waiting for him to express his sincerity. Allying together to kill a boss wasn't a trap. It really was what he's planning. After killing the boss, I need to share the loot with everyone for the alliance to be formed. If I try and take advantage in front of their eyes, I would still profit, but I would lose out on being a part of that beautiful scene. Yes, a beautiful scene. 4 guilds allied together led by God Ye Xiu. If they joined the wild boss competition, what would that scene be like? Martial awareness was already looking forward to it. Everyone needed wild bosses, but their small guilds had another name for killing wild bosses: poaching. Not competing or fighting for one, but poaching. Utterly despicable stealing. But what could they do? They wanted to compete with the big guilds, but the big guilds would simply crush them. They couldn't call that situation competing, but gifting them free equipment. The small guilds could only avoid competing against the big guilds. Picking out the ones that no one noticed and stealthily killing them, wasn't that what poaching was? But with an alliance, their 4 guilds could compete with everyone else. It wasn't like the small guilds had never thought of it before, but with the struggle between the guilds, establishing an alliance wasn't easy. They would always scheme against one another, unable to cooperate. Like that, they couldn't compete against large club guilds. It wasn't like there hadn't been any precedent, but it was different this time. Martial awareness turned around and glanced at that top-heavy guy. The difference was that this time, they had a god. God Ye Xiu's status was too overbearing. They did not like it, but they couldn't deny that his skill far surpassed their own. Only words that came out of someone like him would be able to persuade anyone. Only someone like him could be trusted. Of course, more importantly, the wild bosses were practically being monopolized. The small guilds kept throwing medicine at a dead horse trying to break this monopoly. To make this happen, as long as the method sounded plausible, they would be willing to try it. After martial awareness thought about it for a bit, he decided that he wouldn't be someone who lacked foresight. He would have Parade join the alliance and split the wild boss's rewards among everyone. The boss fight was nearing the end. When Sword Master Qiu dropped to 10% of his total health, the situation became a bit messy because of his enrage, but martial awareness led his group and held on. Despite the casualties, they let the others know that they weren't so bad as to be unable to take down a wild boss by themselves. Finally, Sword Master Qiu fell. Parade didn't express any joy, though. There were 600 players watching them. How could they be excited? The boss died, but they could still die at any moment. Okay, the items are here. Martial awareness didn't immediately pick up the items and instead called out to the 3 other guild leaders and Ye Xiu. He was being thorough with his actions. If he immediately picked up the items, only he would know what items dropped. If that happened, martial awareness could say what had dropped and hide items that he didn't want to give away. The drops from wild bosses weren't fixed. With good luck, there would be more drops. With bad luck, there would be fewer drops. There could be a difference of 10 between the best and worst luck. Martial awareness stayed far away and didn't pick up any of the items. Instead, he called for them to come over. The others couldn't pick any of them up, but they could still look at them and see how many there were and what had dropped. Martial awareness was very careful in his actions. Okay. The others replied and came over to look. The 3 guild leaders and Lord Grimm went up to Sword Master Qiu's corpse and checked the drops. A total of 21 items, martial awareness said. Our luck's pretty good. The last one we killed only dropped 19. Ye Xiu said. Forest Guardian Vich. Martial awareness knew which boss they were talking about. When a wild boss was killed, the system would announce it. Thinking of how the big guilds were busying Peking and unable to do anything else, he saw, as one of the small guilds, that the big guilds looked down on them and took these bosses one after the other. It made martial awareness feel overjoyed. He checked the global chat again and again, enjoying the announcement saying Guild Parade has killed Sword Master Qiu. 21 drops split between 5 guilds. Parade can take the extra one. After all, they were the ones to kill it, White Stream said. He hadn't gotten anything from Forest Guardian Vich. Seeing the drops displayed in front of him, he was starting to feel impatient. An extra one. How shameful. They did all the work. We didn't do anything at all and we're just going to give them one extra. That's no good. Conquering Cloud's Yue Zikin wasn't greedy and spoke fairly. Martial awareness heard them speak and he thought of the future. He laughed. It must have been tiring coming all this way from so far. No worries, we'll split it that way. What are your thoughts? Lulin Slash was still annoyed at his overthinking from before. Now he wanted to hear from Ye Xiu. So what if he acted like a beach or a little kid? I say there's no need to be so picky. There are plenty of bosses, we can just kill more, Ye Xiu said. How domineering, the 4 guild leaders quietly thought. Snatching wild bosses was an extremely difficult task in Glory, and he just casually said, just kill more. It was as if they were eating together and someone said, just eat more. Such a casual and nonchalant reply really made the 4 guild leaders respect him. That was air of a god. Okay, we'll split it between everyone and Parade will take the extra, Lulin Slash said. The other 2 didn't say anything. Martial awareness heard God's words and picked an item. The others took turns taking an item. They didn't bicker over the details. Why? Because Ye Xiu's words had knocked them off balance. After killing a boss, there was no need to bicker over who should get more or less. Just kill more. The more they killed, the more total drops there'll be. Every small difference in drops would average out in the end and become negligible. The King's Avatar Chapter 678 4 Guilds. Although one of Parade's groups had been wiped out, they had been rather heroic, fighting the boss. Compared to the other 3 guilds, they had fewer players remaining, but with a promising future, Parade's performance didn't lose out to the other 3. Besides, they still had many more people than Ye Xiu's group. There were only 4 people on Ye Xiu's side. Chen Guo felt the need to hurry and establish their guild, after seeing the elated and overjoyed looks of the players from the other guilds. She started to count with her fingers to see if she could think of 20 players to create a guild together. With Chen Guo's experience with the game, this was doable, but after scrolling through her friends list, it didn't matter whether they were in excellent dynasty or not. All of them were in a guild already. This was because no one wanted to miss out on the stat points rewarded by the guild's guardian. Even players who were determined not to join any guilds didn't like missing those stat points. They often complained to the game company why they needed to join a guild in order to receive those stat points. However, switching guilds wasn't a difficult task. Chen Guo didn't try to persuade her friends one by one. She just sent it out in the notification group, asking if any of her friends were willing to come and give her a hand. Chen Guo had good relationships with people. Apart from a few who were really attached to their guilds and expressed their apologies, many of them were just there for the free stat points. They weren't very loyal to their guilds and said, "If you're planning on establishing a guild, then of course I'll help you out." Chen Guo received these kinds of replies and easily gathered 20 people. However, she was clear that these friends were only joining to meet the required numbers, so they wouldn't be very loyal to the guild. This meant that they wouldn't be interested in any guild activities. They were the types of people who would play with their close friends. To them, guilds were only a source of skill points. So even though Chen Guo had received help from these friends, she still needed to hurry and take down the guild guardian. But to obtain a guardian, one needed the appropriate guild level, which was something that needed to be leveled by the guild players. Those guys were there to take what was readily available, so they couldn't be counted on. As for people like Ye Xiu, Tang Ru, and Steamed Bun, it would be a waste to have them spend time completing guild quests. Would Chen Guo have to do everything by herself in the end? Chen Guo began to sweat just at the thought of it. T-thighs wasn't something that could be achieved by a single person. It seemed that Chen Guo would need to recruit people from the outside. When Chen Guo was thinking about this matter, Ye Xiu was having a discussion with the guild leaders of the 4 guilds about their following grand plan. They felt that they already had enough members in the alliance, and that there was no need for any more members. After all, there would only be around 20 items dropped from a wild boss. If there really was an alliance between all 20 club guilds, then would that mean every guild would only receive one material after killing the wild boss? It felt pretty tight. Furthermore, there were times where there were fewer than 20 items. In that case, it would be awkward if there weren't enough to divide between everyone. They would experiment with 4 guilds first and recruit more allies if it didn't work. After all, this wouldn't be difficult to do because there were only a few major guilds who had the capability to win over the wild boss. There were still queue of guilds who couldn't get anything. The few were chatting while waiting on any news about wild bosses. But after chatting to a point where they were searching for things to talk about, they felt that something wasn't right. This was not how they should hunt for a boss, who would just hang in the game waiting for news. They should still use this time to do whatever they needed to do. Everyone should only come together immediately after receiving any news on the boss. When they thought of this, everyone prepared to leave and do whatever they needed to do. Now that Ye Xiu had gained 3 guilds as his allies, he promptly requested the 3 guilds to be on the lookout for deception. "God, are you really going to keep killing him? Aren't you taking this too far?" Lulan joked. He was someone who had interacted Ye Xiu for a long time. He wouldn't think that Ye Xiu was someone who hated someone so deeply just after one incident and kill that person endlessly. "I think his skills are pretty good. I plan on recruiting him into my team," Ye Xiu said. "Huh." Lulan was also thinking about doing that. But what does killing him continuously have to do with recruiting them into the team? If you want to recruit someone, shouldn't you treat them nicer? Although that was what Lulan thought, he couldn't really hold any opinions against God's method of doing things. Since God already had intentions of roping in deception, he decided to give up on deception. His heavenly swords was getting ready for the alliance, and he had done all sorts of preparations already. Even though Lulan didn't have many players like deception, he didn't have so few that he desperately needed more, so he wouldn't have any sentiments if deception were taken away. After each guild had left, the team did whatever they had to do. Ye Xiu led Tang Ru and Steamed Bun to scrap pick again. Chen Guo told Ye Xiu about the guild's situation. Ye Xiu didn't have any opinions towards it. Chen Guo immediately gathered her group of friends together. Those people had a guild, so they naturally had to leave it. They would only be able to accept her guild invite after 5 days. Ye Xiu's group of 3 scrap-picked for a while without seeing any news about any wild bosses spawning. Their work and rest routines recently were quite good. They had stayed up pretty late tonight, so Ye Xiu notified the allied guilds that they were going to log off. Of course, the guild leaders felt regretful. They wanted God to be a robot that stayed online for 24 hours, but they knew that this was impossible. In any case, their current alliance was harmonious and unified. The big guilds wouldn't meddle with them for now. The 4 of them combined would most definitely be a strong power. Ye Xiu's absence wouldn't hinder them from killing the boss if it appeared at night. And if Ye Xiu didn't join in, he wouldn't be able to receive any of the materials that dropped, so there weren't any objections to this matter. This was one of the reasons why Chen Guo wanted to hurry and create a guild quickly. If they relied on Ye Xiu for everything, they would miss out on many opportunities because he couldn't stay online for the entire day. As for Wei Chen, the world war was still as intense as ever. Wei Chen didn't even lift his head when the people told him to go rest. He gave 2 messy hums. No one was able to tell whether he would sleep or not. In any case, the few just left first. After returning to the practice room on the morning of the 2nd day, Wei Chen's posture didn't seem to have any differences compared to last night. Tusk, despite being so old, your ability to stay up all night hasn't seemed to decrease from all these years, Ye Xiu said. FCK off. Wei Chen stretched as if he weren't in the middle of an intense battle. "How are the battles going?" Ye Xiu held a cigarette in his mouth and watched Wei Chen from behind. Wei Chen also lit one and forced a bitter laugh. "How else could it be? It's a pure waste of time." "You seem pretty into it," Ye Xiu said. "It's not bad to be feeling hot-blooded again," Wei Chen said. "What about the wild bosses from last night?" Ye Xiu asked. "3 announcements," Wei Chen said. "Oh, which 3 guilds were they taken down by?" Ye Xiu asked. "Heavenly Justice, Conquering Clouds, and Radiant." Wei Chen remembered all. They were all from the Alliance. Ye Xiu immediately knew that their alliance was working very well. Just as expected, the moment he logged online, the 4 guild leaders of the 4 guilds came over enthusiastically to report their success. The number of wild bosses that they had killed last night weren't 3 but 4. Wei Chen was engaged in an intense fight, so he had missed one of the announcements. Not bad at all," Ye Xiu said. "Ha ha, this is the loot from yesterday. Have a look, is there anything you need?" Lulan sent over a dense list of items. Although it was normal to not receive anything since he hadn't been there, God's position was different. The allied guilds let him have some special privileges. It was evident that Lulan's list of items was the complete list. It wasn't just the ones he had received. He couldn't have come to this decision for the other 3 guilds on his own, so this must have been the result after a discussion between the 4 guilds. "Haha, there's no need. I didn't even participate, how can I take any?" Ye Xiu refused. He didn't want to be given special treatment because of his status. He couldn't just focus on what was happening in-game. Once the guild in Chen Guo's hands developed, they might have to get someone else to take over these responsibilities in the future. It would be good if he started off being equal with everyone. "Did anyone see Deception last night?" Ye Xiu asked them. "No," the few guilds all replied. Ye Xiu knew where Deception had logged off, so he naturally told them about the location. At that time, they expressed confidently with a pat to their chest, saying that there's no problem because they would join up and organize someone to take turns watching over the place. "You guys aren't going to take a break?" Ye Xiu asked the 4 soon afterwards. "Not tired yet," the 4 gave the same answer. They were too excited. They had never killed wild bosses before with this much delight. Even though the 4 allied guilds only received a quarter of the reward each, it was very satisfying to see their own guilds appear on TV again and again. At this moment, the materialistic profits weren't as important. After Wei Chen finished smoking, he finally got up to have a rest. He wasn't made of iron. Despite gaming with so much enthusiasm last night, his energy had come to an end and his face was filled with fatigue. There were people like Wei Chen, who gamed the whole night and went to rest, but there were also people who had slept for the night and had gotten up to dive into the battle again. Only compared to last night, most of the players' hot-blooded enthusiasm had finally been extinguished. Once they were calm enough to see their stats in red and their empty equipment section, the players wouldn't understand why they had been so excited last night for. After such an intense battle, the absolute majority of the players were unable to make up for the losses they had suffered yesterday. In the morning, the world war in the game had loosened up much more. Many people swayed around with incomplete equipment sets as if they didn't know what they should do. At this time, the pressure had on the players that belonged to the big guilds decreased greatly. Their battles were unified and with discipline. Although there were losses in the fight, at the same time, they also plundered equipment from the opponents that they had killed. Afterwards, the guild allocated these stolen equipment to everyone, so they were just trading equipment in a sense. However, no one could skirt around the penalty that one would lose experience for dying. At this moment in the heavenly domain, the stats of the majority of the players were red as if they were coded in Blood the King's Avatar Chapter 679. How could these injured players still have the passion to continue fighting? The vast majority of them were starting to feel annoyed at their previous hot-bloodedness. There was always silence after noise. This time's world war had erupted quickly. The first signs of its development started at the beginning of the playoffs. By the time the first round of the finals finished, the war had reached its peak. That night, very few of the still fighting players left the battlefield in good condition, especially the individuals who fought alone. They were practically running around naked when the sun rose. If they were able to actually win some honor, the war could be considered meaningful. The loyal fans definitely wouldn't feel any remorse. The problem was that no guild had suffered any significant losses. Which guilds had been slaughtered until they were left running away, crying for their parents? None. The small advantages gained in any of the battlefields didn't affect the overall situation. The big club guilds involved in the World War wouldn't be shaken in just a single night. This war was purely a show of intent. Apart from venting their emotions, it was completely meaningless. After a burst of passion, emptiness would naturally follow. Their hearts would be empty as well as their inventory. Many of the players wanted to cry. Of course, there were no lack of players who found the experience thrilling. They skipped delightedly without any clothing over to others and bragged about how they sliced off the head of an arrogant enemy last night. These people clearly pursued happiness. Ye Xiu had lured Grimm to walk around casually. Most of what he saw were players standing around at a loss for what to do. The big club guilds wouldn't be so idle, though. They bragged on the global chat about how brave or fierce their players had been in the World War and how their team's fans didn't lose to anyone. From the announcements given by the club guilds in the global chat, it seemed as if everyone had won in this war. But from the appearances of the players all over the streets, it seemed as if everyone had lost this war. Ye Xiu wasn't too surprised by this scene. A war based purely from passion would end with this result. It was just a game, though. If no one had any passion and everything had to be done based on what benefits or profit one could gain, the game wouldn't be fun. The various club guilds praised their players for being mighty, while consoling them for their losses. The guilds all had some kind of equipment compensation event. It wasn't too important if someone wanted to take advantage of it. They distributed their equipment to everyone. It was more important to provide care for their fans and let everyone know that they were one group. For the club guilds, their attitude towards their supporters was important. How could these club guilds not be skilled with these strategies? Their players fought until they were covered in red and then they had to pay for their losses. It sounded painful, but this was the passion of their players. In truth, the club guilds liked this sort of passion. If everyone was cold and rational, a lot of work would be difficult to do. To think this war would end so quickly. The four allied guild leaders sighed. They hoped that these big club guilds would never stop fighting, but it looked like that this period had come to an end. Many players couldn't continue on with their injuries, so the war slowly died down. No problem, there's still the second round of the finals. The guys who were taking advantage of this situation obviously hoped that the second round of the finals would cause another war to erupt. How many wild bosses are left this week? Ye Xiu asked Lulan Slash. Lulan Slash had a detailed count. 36, he replied. After the guild war ended, while they comforted their fans, they also began competing for wild bosses again. There are still 36 wild bosses remaining this week. Among these, there are 9 level 71s. Last night, when everyone was still busy, a total of 7 wild bosses spawned. Among them, 4 were level 70. They were Darkness Palace's Night Streak, World Tree's Guardian Vich, Sighing Ravine's Sword Master Keu, and Setting Sun Waterfall's Hidden Warrior Alien. Don't look at how the big club guilds were busy peeking. They didn't stop paying attention to wild bosses, especially the important level 71s, which were given more details. It seems like a few guilds took advantage of the situation. The various big guilds thought. It didn't matter who killed them. If they set out, those guilds had no chance anyways. While we have nothing to do, have everyone be on the lookout for bosses. The various big guilds all gave similar orders to their subordinates. The finals wasn't over. They didn't know whether the fires of war would erupt again. In any case, as guilds who could control themselves, they definitely wouldn't take the initiative to provoke a war. The big club guilds let these 7 wild bosses go and participated in this unfavorable world war to side with their fans' passion and resolve. Now that things were looking calm, they wanted to take a break. Of course, this break didn't mean vacation. Wild bosses still needed to be won. Understood. The players gave a resounding affirmation to their respective guilds' orders. Time slowly passed. There weren't too many players in the early morning. Everyone had sorted out their emotions and made up for their equipment. As for the club players, they adjusted quickly, especially the elite teams. After this huge war, the guilds spent great efforts to regroup everyone back together. Everyone's equipment was compensated and they worked hard to regain their lost experience. In such a chaotic war, everyone had died at least once, unless you never fought on the front lines. Everyone was done methodically up until the various big guilds suddenly received a message. Rising Sky Straight, level 60 boss, Ocean Returner Ganlia. It's just a level 60 wild boss, the core members of the big guild said. Level 60 wild bosses weren't something they coveted. Let alone the elite teams, they didn't need a fixed group to send over. Just send whoever was nearby. It's just a level 60 wild boss. What the big guilds didn't know was that several smaller club guilds had the same attitude as them. They would certainly raise their eyebrows if they knew about this. When did these guilds ever express such indifference towards wild bosses? Even if it was a level 61. Rising Sky Straight. The various guilds who received reports of the boss quickly dispatched players to hurry over. On Blue Brook Guild's side, Blue River was controlling his main Heavenly Domain account, Blue Bridge Spring Snow. He was leading his hastily put-together group to Rising Sky Straight. After experiencing a world war, the guild players were exhausted. How could Blue River not feel bad standing out to share some of the burden? As a result, the position of leading a group to snatch a wild boss, which he didn't like to do, landed on him. If we get there fast, it'd be great if we could kill the boss before anyone arrived. Blue River thought rather extravagantly. Clearly, Blue Brook Guild wasn't the quickest to arrive. Midway, they received a message from up ahead. A guild had already gathered there and was starting to clear the field. Which guild? So fast? Blue River asked. Parade, the other side responded. Parade, huh? So they want to poach, Blue River thought to himself. He had knowledge of the strength of various powers. He was very clear about the strength of these smaller club guilds. Hurry, Blue River shouted to his group. Even though it was just Parade, the boss was only level 60. Killing it wouldn't be difficult for them. If they arrived too late, the boss might already be dead. Be careful and watch it carefully. Blue River contacted the scouts up ahead. Another guild has arrived, the other side replied. Oh, which guild? Blue River hastily asked. Heavenly Justice, the other side reported. Oh, that's perfect. Let them fight it out. When we arrive, there'll be easy pickings. Blue River was delighted. Another guild has come. The scouts continued to message, radiant. Oh, Conquering Cloud has also come. Another message came. What's going on? How could these guilds be faster than us? Blue River was a bit depressed. Wild bosses depended on manpower. The more players a guild had, the larger their intelligence network would be. As a result, the top club guilds with their huge fanbase had a huge advantage over these smaller club guilds. Yet these 4 smaller club guilds had arrived first, while their Blue Brook Guild was still only halfway there, which meant these guilds' intelligence network was much faster than theirs. But it didn't matter who got there first. The boss still had to be fought over. If they couldn't move the boss away, then it was actually better to arrive late. Blue River thought. He messaged the scouts up ahead. "Give me reports about the situation whenever you can." "Herb Garden has come," the scouts replied. "How lively." Blue River mumbled. Waves slammed fiercely into the stone shores of Rising Sky Strait. A huge battle had already begun on shore. The first to arrive was Parade. They weren't polite and started fighting the wild boss ocean returner Ganlia already. A group from Herb Garden had arrived. This group consisted of nearby players as well. The player leading the group was called Amaranth, an absolute core member of Herb Garden. A core member like this was definitely trustworthy. Letting him pick up the items wasn't an issue. When Amaranth led his group over, he suddenly felt confused. Parade was attacking the boss, and around them were 3 guilds just standing there, watching. He could understand if these spectators wanted to wait and attack Parade later, but why was Parade doing nothing? Parade could clearly see the Oriole standing behind them, yet they're just continuing to slash around as the mantis. What were they thinking? Amaranth was puzzled, so he didn't move either. Who didn't want to wait and kill them later for easy pickings? It simplified matters, and like this, guild after guild arrived. Tyrannical Ambition, Blue Brook Guild, Samsara, Misty Rain, even Excellent Dynasty. Even though they had been relegated, they still had aspirations. The guilds had all arrived. They were all confused as they watched in wonder. The Parade players killing the boss were a bit nervous. "FCK, why are there so many people? Are you all here to watch us perform or something?" The King's Avatar Chapter 680 Blue Brook Guild wasn't early at all. By the time they arrived, old rivals like Herb Garden, Tyrannical Ambition, and Excellent Dynasty were already there. Blue River looked around. He hardly knew anyone among the normal players, but it was hard not to recognize the people leading because they were old and core members of their respective guilds. Although they were opponents who constantly fought each other, the people managing the guilds also had professional attitudes like the pro players. Enemies in the match but friends outside of it. No one was lenient when snatching the boss, but since they hadn't started yet, it wasn't strange to gather together and chat. Blue River saw the group leaders of the guilds huddled up and muttering, so he came up to greet them. "Oh, it's Blue Bridge. Long time no see." The people huddled together greeted back. Blue River hadn't been leading groups to fight bosses recently, so there were less interactions between him and the other guilds. This made the long time no see natural. "MHMM," Blue River answered. He didn't have to explain and went straight into the conversation. "What's going on here?" Parade attacked the moment they arrived and are now trapped. It seems that they're now in an awkward position. They can't walk out of it, and they would be killed by the boss if they don't fight back. Tusk, what a tragedy." They came up with such a conclusion after observing. "Oh," Blue River replied, but he felt something wasn't right, and it was soon brought up by Herb Garden's Amaranth. "There's quite a lot of guilds today. It seems like this will require quite some effort." Yes, there were a lot of guilds. It was rare to see guilds like Parade, Conquering Clouds, Radiant, and Heavenly Justice in battles for wild bosses. Although they didn't see them as threats, it was annoying to have 4 additional guilds when they already had numerous other big guilds because everyone only fought for themselves. It was hard to find a time to dive and cut into the fight. Everyone hoped to gain the advantage of attacking later, but the boss's health didn't wait for players. Who would lose their patience and interfere first? They wouldn't discuss about this matter. These were methods that the big guilds would use in the following competition. Who would discuss about how they would fight? Parade was fighting in a huge group. The boss's figure wasn't prominent. However, Ocean Returner Gallia was still pretty noticeable, so Blue River was able to find the target with ease. When he checked the boss's HP, it had decreased quite a lot. After looking around, every guild was prepared to act at any moment. After Blue River joined the group for a short chat, all of the group leaders scattered and returned to their players. The guilds started to be aware of one another's actions while planning how to make their move. At the same time, Blue River started to receive messages coming from the core members of other guilds. Tyrannical Ambition suggested an alliance to get rid of Herb Garden, while Herb Garden said Excellent Dynasty had offered to work together to get of Blue Brook Guild, and Herb Garden didn't approve to use those methods and suggested for an alliance to get rid of Excellent Dynasty instead. After that, Excellent Dynasty messaged about working together to get rid of Tyrannical Ambition. Here it comes again. Blue River looked at all of the messages. The draining feeling on his mind returned. He didn't wish to take part in these courteous but insincere and deceiving tussles. But these things were unavoidable if one were to lead a group to snatch a wild boss. Especially if it's in these kind of situations where it seemed peaceful, but the fight had yet to start. It would have been less troublesome if they just started fighting in the beginning. Sure. Blue River was really tired of these things and didn't bother to analyze the given information to find any opportunities. He just accepted them all without responsibility. Finally, the boss's HP had dropped to a quarter of its original health. Under normal circumstances, everyone would have started to make a move at this time. However, the big guilds were able to keep their cool. They wanted to leave this opportunity to Conquering Clouds, Radiant, and Heavenly Justice and have them make their move first. No one would have thought that the smaller club guilds were able to hold their cool even more so than the big guilds. Despite the drastic drop of the boss's health, they were still able to hold their cool and not make a move. FCK. Small guilds are just small guilds. Have they ever snatched a wild boss before? Do they have any common knowledge? Someone complained from the big guilds. In reality, Conquering Clouds, Radiant, and Heavenly Justice weren't small in the eyes of normal players at all. However, they were still small in their eyes. As for the guilds built by normal players with a few hundred people, DMN, do those even count as guilds? The small guilds' calm movements placed the big guilds in an awkward position. They couldn't just make their move and let the small guilds gain the initiative and strike their backs, no. No, that would be embarrassing, so they continued to wait. The big guilds remained inactive and continued to watch the boss's health decrease. When the small guilds still made no move, many wanted to rush over and remind them, hey, if you don't attack, then no one's going to get that boss. The boss's health went from 1/4, 1/5, and then to 1/6. Motionless, and still motionless. The small guilds were motionless like a mountain, while the big guilds were sitting on pins and needles. At last, someone came to a realization. If we're here, they wouldn't be dare to move. Yes, they must be intimidated because we're all here. When someone thought of this, the three small guilds finally made their move. FCK, people who thought so felt as if they had been proven wrong, so they felt embarrassed. The three guilds hadn't been moving, but once they did, they moved in such a thunderous way. Each player bared their fangs and claws as they leapt towards Parade. Yeah, that's more like it. Fight, kill. Make it fierce so we can clear you guys up later. The big guilds were satisfied. They started to secretly distribute players, preparing to start at any time. Take over the boss to attack other guilds that planned on taking over the boss too, avoiding other guilds messing them up. They have much to do. How could they not assign each of them tasks? At this moment, everyone noticed that something was wrong. Yes, wrong, it was very wrong. When the three guilds leapt ahead, why did the health of Ocean Returner Gallia decrease even faster? 1/7, 1/8, 1/9. Enraged. FCK, you guys should get rid of players of Parade before taking over the boss. Who would snatch it so impatiently like you guys? Would you even be able to take the aggro at this point? If you fight like this, the boss will fall before the players of Parade. They would have taken up majority of the damage output, so this boss would definitely go to them. Bunch of idiots, pigs, do you know how to snatch a boss? The big guilds fumed. They hadn't thought that these guys from the small guilds would be so incapable and end up ruining everything instead. They hastily prepared to make their move, preparing to give a lesson to these small guilds who didn't know how to snatch a boss properly. But they were too late. Before they could rush to the front, the system came out with the announcement: Guild Parade has killed Ocean Returner Galia. FCK, these idiots. The big guilds would never think they would end up with this situation. Everyone nearly died of rage. But luckily, this was only a level 60 wild boss, so everyone's sentiments were easy to digest. At this time, the big guilds really wished to see the expressions of those three idiotic guilds. Are you snatching the boss? You were merely supporting Parade's attacks. You stupid birds, now you know. Are you stupefied? Players of the big guilds didn't plan to let out their sentiments through physical force. They believed that the three small guilds must be mourning with tearless grief at the moment. They must be having mixed feelings of remorse and shame, and having unresistible emotions to run into the wall. However, who would have thought that when the boss fell and the announcement came out, the players on that side stopped immediately. The three guilds withdrew their players as if nothing happened. Then there was Parade, who finished clearing the battlefield with cheerful laughter and just walked across in front of the big guilds. What's going on? Everyone from the big guilds noticed that something wasn't right. The leading core members gathered again for a small meeting. As they gazed at the silhouettes of the four guilds that had left, these four, why did they seem as if they were one guild when walking together? It seems as if not many people from Parade died, someone mentioned. What's with this? Those three guilds, they didn't attack the players of Parade at all. Don't tell me that they concentrated on the boss the moment they made their move and planned to snatch the boss this way. Do they have any common sense? Blue River didn't express his thoughts. He was still staring at the people walking farther and farther away. He immediately saw that among the characters was a silhouette. His appearance was unbalanced. The proportion of the head equipment was clearly unequal to the legs. He walked among the group with many people clustered around him. Blue River couldn't read the person's id clearly, but he already had some sort of hunch. He promptly let his blue bridge spring snow rush out and quickly closed up the distance. When he saw the person's id, it perfectly matched his dreaded hunch. Lord Grim, Blue Bridge. A few from the big guilds watched strangely as Blue Bridge Spring Snow sprinted ahead for a section before halting suddenly and walking back slowly. Those guys, they're supporting the attack, Blue River said. What? They're working together. Do you understand? The four of them are one. Parade deals with the boss. The other three made their moves to help defeat the boss quicker, not to snatch it. We've been fooled, Blue River said. Everyone was speechless, but they had to admit that what Blue River said was highly probable. Otherwise, it was against common knowledge to just fight the boss without clearing other players. Even though they often called those guilds small guilds, were they really small guilds? Of course not. They were guilds working under professional teams and had the same aim and working direction as them. How could they not have common sense? Why would they commit these kind of mistakes? The fault was with the big guilds. They underestimated their opponents. They had never even viewed the opponents as equal. Instead, they were planning on how to deal with the guilds beside them. As a result, all their plannings were for naught. The four small guilds had gotten rid of the boss magnificently under everyone's gaze and left with a low profile.